Okay, Lisa, it's all yours.
Okay. I'm working on a Mac for the first time, so excuse me, everybody. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the January 24th, 2022 meeting of the Hickory Ridge Village Board. I am Lisa Dean, and I'd like to take this opportunity for the other board members to introduce themselves so you can put a face with their names.
Everyone, Christina Mari. Deb, I think you're muted.
I was.
I'm Sky.
Good evening. My name is Jansen Evelyn.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Our first order of business is approval of this evening's agenda.
I so move.
I second. All in favor? Great, that's unanimous. It's approved. We're next going to the approval of the January 10th, 2022 meeting minutes. Are there any corrections or updates anybody would like to share? Okay, great. Can I get a motion to approve those January 10th minutes, please?
I
Motion.
move to approve them.
All right, Deb moved. Can I get a second?
Second.
Christine, second. All in favor? Raise
We
your hand.
talked over each other.
Okay, all in favor, none opposed. Great. We're on to item number 3, board updates. I will open up the floor and I will allow to recognize folks if they want to raise their hands and contribute, board members. All righty then, we're moving right along. Our next item is number 4, Village Voices. I'd like to remind residents that there is a 3-minute limit per speaker. Laura, do we have a dedicated timer person for this evening?
Emily, can you do timing on a stopwatch for 3 minutes? Would that work for you? You're muted, dearest.
Sorry, there we go.
Are you cool with that?
I'm using AirPods for the second time. So Lisa, I'm with you. New technology. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And let's open it up for Village Voices. I'll let Laura recognize folks in the order that they raise their hands or the order that she can recognize them. You see anybody, Laura?
Alan Schwartz has his hand raised. Alan, go ahead.
Good evening to all. I'm raising tonight a matter that is important to Hickory Ridge and all of Columbia, in my opinion, that is pending before CA that has not been brought to our attention. And I wonder why, not at least by our CA rep, who recently said nothing important is pending. It concerns open space management projects that have come to my attention. It involves cleaning out stream beds in open space. Private companies have made proposals in which they can make millions of dollars. One was done in Longfellow last year, and another application is pending at Owen Brown in Long Beach involving 20 acres of land and 6 miles of stream beds. Under the program, these private companies are paid for their work and get something called mitigation bank credits worth millions of dollars, and which then can be sold by those companies to land developers for additional millions of dollars. CA has to grant easements in order for this project to work. The project requires approval by the Army Corps of Engineers and the Maryland Department of the Environment. Well, the project done last year, Longfellow, while it was ongoing, came under tremendous concern by area residents for causing damage to the affected area. They consulted with experts who also raised concerns. Now, these folks are raising concerns over the Lake Elkhorn project. They've offered expert testimony supported by the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, the Sierra Club, the Patuxent River Keepers, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. In fact, the Army Corps of Engineers and the MDE have decided to continue evaluation because of their concerns. Of great importance, I think, is CA's role. They're granting easements and supporting these projects. Residents who questioned the work in Longfellow were threatened for speaking out by a lawyer who represented the private company. The threat also seemed to be on behalf of CA. And the threat has had the effect of intimidating public comments on CA projects, which I think is absolutely terrible. Well, it turns out the lawyer did not reveal the fact that she was also the lawyer for the Rouse Project, the group that received funding from Howard Hughes, which publicly wants to take, quote, monopolistic control, end quote, because that's from their literature of Columbia, and is connected to supporting Kimco in our Hickory Ridge Village Center case. The lawyer didn't reveal she was also the Rouse Project lawyer. She incorporated the Rouse Project and is their official registered contact. I bring this to the attention of the village board and our CA rep, of course, since I want to know, as do all of our residents, that our village board and CA are free from control by any developer, and that CA would never directly or indirectly stifle citizen comments about CA projects, never. And besides being concerned about any similar project that might come up in our village, I believe that is the reason why our village board should now adopt rules governing disclosure of funding for village board candidates, so we can be sure projects like this cannot be controlled by private companies. Thank you.
That's a lot. Thanks, Alan. It's a lot to take in. I'll be interested in what Jessamine can report to us, and we'll go from there. Thank you. Laura, any other?
Sky just raised her hand. Sky, go ahead.
I'm wondering if he could put that in writing.
Ellen, you want to email it to me and I'll forward it to the board members, or you could email it to the board members or something like that?
I'm not on mute, am I? No.
Nope.
Sky, I don't mind answering questions, but if you want to raise questions, but is, you know, simply sitting down and typing out some comments that I just jotted down in formal manner isn't something that I would particularly care to do. If there's something that you didn't understand about this, I would be more than happy to have a independent conversation with you about it and give you whatever additional facts you might need to know.
I would just prefer something written. I have forgotten a lot of what you said, and
Well, please contact me.
request.
I understand.
I remind you that we have this meeting recorded, and there is a closed caption transcript that is recorded, so you can go back and refer to exactly what Mr. Schwartz just
But
laid.
there's nothing written.
I do not have anything written. I had notes to bring it up to you. And if, like I said, Sky, I've talked to you before at other occasions. I've been very involved in the matters concerning our village center. And I think this is an important public interest issue and isn't simply going to be, even just listening to my comments, I had to keep them relatively short in order to make sure that I got the point across and observed the 3-minute rule. But I think if you're not familiar with it, I would strongly suggest that you talk to our CA rep, Jessamine. And I know this matter is now being brought to the attention of the CA board because the program entails CA granting easements, as I indicated, and these mitigation bank credits are very valuable. And the fact that there could be any effort to stifle community concern, there is a substantial group of residents, some very technically qualified, who have stood up in this matter, presented testimony, and convinced the MDE and the Army Corps of Engineers to take a step back and extend the time for public comments. They extended it, I think, until February 23rd. And the important issue is, as I mentioned, the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, the Sierra Club, Patuxent River Keepers have all stepped into this issue, as have a couple U.S. senators, several Congress people, several members of our county council. And it's not just about Lake Elkhorn or Longfellow for that matter. It's about all the open space programs that exist here in the city and how they're being managed. And questions have been raised about whether CA itself got independent expert advice Questions have been raised whether or not CA is giving away easements. It's something less than their real value. And
Right,
even
I
question,
think you're repeating yourself at this point. I would like the board to look into this more so that we have some facts on which to discuss. And maybe Jess will enlighten us when she gives her report as well. Thank you.
you're quite welcome.
And also we could ask Deborah Wesner and the Watershed Steward Group for, Deborah Wesner represents our village with the Watershed Committee at CA. So I don't know if they're involved in this or not, but I can reach out to her and ask her about it.
I think that is a good idea. There have been some watershed people who have taken a look at this now. It's amazing that the community was generally unaware of what was going on.
Okay, and Jess emailed me, she will be a little late tonight, so when she's here, maybe she has more that she can fill us in on. Does anybody else have any comments? Okay, so Lisa, I think that's it for that, for Village Voices.
I would like to move that we move Jessamine's report to maybe after old business so she can arrive in time. And if we need to, we'll further move it. Any objections? Okay, with no objections, we'll move Jessamine's report to after old business. Okay, new business. Reminding residents that they may speak on for 1 minute on each item on the agenda. And our first item is donations to Wild Lake High School PTA. And I believe we have a representative. Laura, can you please introduce her? I don't see a name on her.
Sure. I hope I pronounced your name right. Mata Zanali, is that correct?
Yes,
From-
it is.
All right,
Perfect.
from Wild Lake High School is here. They have made a donation request. So go ahead, explain what you wanted.
Okay. So every year, Hickory Ridge, at least as far as back as we went when we did our budget, been very gracious to give us donations. And I think every year we ask for, we have about 5 villages that we ask donations from. And maybe last year, if I'm correct, 3 of them did donate to us. And I know that because of our situation this year and because of last year's not getting enough funds and our limited ways that we're fundraising, we would like to ask for a little bit more. So we're actually asking for $1,000 this year. Last year, you did provide us $500. If you can't provide that, you know, that's okay. I'm sure that you guys have, you know, increased costs as well as everybody else. But I wanted to come here and see if you guys were able to help us with the donation. Some of the things that we use the money for is for, I'm looking at my notes, after prom, staff appreciation. Other clubs also come to us from the school, scholarships for the seniors, senior celebrations. We also donate money, like for example, to HC Drug Free, PTA Council for various things, and the Homewood School. PTA Council also has a scholarship as well. We are trying to raise more funds. For example, this year we did start our, I know this is crazy, but our Facebook page and also Amazon Smile. We're going to consider a mulch fundraiser this year, but that's not decided on yet. We're going to, we're working on trying to ask the community, like the corporations and businesses, for donations this year as well. And I'm trying to think, sorry. The 27th, the After Prom Howard County PTA is hosting, you know, how to raise funds to kind of teach us how to fundraise. So we're going to attend that. But the cost of, I guess what I wanted to explain is that Wild Lake High School, while we do think that we could ramp up our fundraising for the future and work on it, there has, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit nervous. So I'm getting really nervous here. All right, so
You're doing
basically, yeah.
Yeah,
So I guess what I wanted to say is that not that we have to do everything the same way as other high schools do, but just to give you a comparison, an after prom, if we do an after prom outside of the high school, like maybe at main event or a place like that, it would cost us about $20,000 or more. And our budget is basically that for everything that we do, compared to the other schools in the county. So while I personally think it's doable for us to try to raise more funds, it's going to be, you know, it's going to be a challenge. Our membership fees are as low as $5. From that, we only get 75 cents. Of course, not everybody does the $5 option. We have like a $25 family option. People can donate as much as they want. But that decision of it being $5 has been there for the last few years, which also, limits our fundraising a little bit because of the number of people that choose that option. And we could discuss that next year, but right now that is what we have. Something else that, like, for example, we do is like Hispanic Heritage. We had a contest this year, and we had prizes for the students who entered that contest. Yeah, and we are also trying to increase our membership. We did increase it by a little bit so far. We now have 269 members. The school does have, I believe, approximately 1,400 students. So really, our membership is low compared to that. And we're also trying to get teachers to join. We have a low teacher staff membership level. We're trying to, this week, trying to entice the teachers by taking them granola bars and, membership forms and trying to get them to, join. And I think that's about it. If you have any questions.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Dean. I have a couple of questions, and I'm wondering if you could, if you have the information, or you could gather the information and let us know what the numbers of Hickory Ridge residents who attend Wild Lake are compared to residents of other villages, number one. And I'm also interested, I heard a long list of items that you would seek to spend this money on. Several of them included making donations to other organizations. I would like to know, and I'm wondering if you might be able to come back to us with a breakdown of, what it is that this money is particularly going to be spent on. We had a discussion last week about a donation for Howard County Red Cross, and there was a discussion about the wisdom of having our donations benefit either institutions that reside within Hickory Ridge, or that mainly benefit Hickory Ridge residents. So if you could provide us that information, I think that would be really helpful. Any other comments or questions from board members?
I've known
Yeah,
Matt
I
for a
believe
very
we-
long time, and Matt is a go-getter, and she'll get the job done. So more power to you, girl.
Thank you.
You're welcome, girl.
Well, I should know the answer to the Hickory Ridge, but I don't recall it right now, but I think that was mentioned beginning of the year. As far as the numbers, I mean, I can get you a detailed breakdown. I don't think a lot of it is going to the other organizations, but it's the typical, they ask, HC Drug Free asks every, I think, high school to give them a couple of $100 or $300 a year. We also, Homewood School does not have a PTA. Therefore, all the PTAs are asked to donate. It's up to the PTAs to donate or not. They don't have to, but because Homewood School has, like, for example, the numbers change, but a certain number of students go to Homewood from all of the schools, whether it's, I think it's not just high school. So we like to help them out. The scholarship we have scholarships. I think we have 1, 2, 3, 4. I think we have $2,100 for scholarships. But we also donate for a couple of $100, I believe, to PTA Council for their scholarship as well. They usually have about $5 or $6 or $7,000 a year that they have for scholarships. That, of course, that can change every year.
If you would be willing to submit to Laura an indication of exactly what our money is going to be used for.
Oh, okay,
I think
sure.
that would be helpful.
That would be more for senior events, is basically where our, and staff appreciation, those costs are the high costs.
Okay.
In the past, we have been making breakfast for the teachers. We no longer want to really do that, especially with COVID. So our cost of like teacher appreciation right now is most
I'm going to ask
catering places that we reached out to.
I'm going to ask if you could commit that to writing and share that with
Okay.
Laura so we can have a further understanding. And Sky, I think you.
Yeah. I've had my hand up for quite a while. It's my understanding that you're requesting a donation from us for the after prom party. Is that correct? Or do you want a donation just to the general fund to go into all of these other wonderful programs that you have? In the past, it's been for the after prom party.
Right. This year, we budgeted them as after prom / senior celebration.
Okay.
The school is, yeah. So it's mostly for the students, but it would be more general because we don't really, even if you donate the money for after prom, it really hasn't been restricted. Like if it doesn't get used, the next year it's used for something else. So it's mostly really for senior / after prom. Because last year they didn't have an after prom,
Right.
and that's what it was used for. This year, the principal is letting the students decide. So we are, haven't 100% decided yet, but the funds will mostly go to the seniors, just
Great.
like in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm going to move that we table decision on this until we get more information submitted and we can re-examine it at a later time. Can I get a second?
I second it.
And all in favor of tabling this for a later discussion? 4 in favor.
All against, I guess? Or abstain?
I would say I abstain. I think historically, we've given this money to Wild Lake. Many students from Hickory Ridge, particularly in Clary's Forest, they go to school over at Wild Lake High School. And I know this has historically been done for the prom. So while the motion is going to move to table it to get the additional data, I personally don't see any reason to not give them the money now or vote on the money now. So that's why I didn't vote.
So you're abstaining?
As I just said, yes.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, thank you so much for coming. The next item on our new business agenda is B, approval of minutes for the last special committee meeting, as we discussed. Of the last special election procedure review committee meeting. As we discussed, that as a board committee, the board may approve those last minutes, and as the committee has been dissolved, it now falls to us to approve those minutes. I've read them. I don't have any comments or additions. Do any other board members? Okay, I move that we approve the minutes for the final special elections procedure. Laura, what's the name of it, please? The special committee.
The special committee for election policies and procedures.
Can I get a second for approving those minutes? All right, Deb seconds. All in favor of approving those minutes? Raise your hand. Okay. So that's, Laura, can you call that? Who voted for what?
Okay, it looks like you, Christine, and Deb voted to approve. Sky, did you raise your hand?
Yes,
Okay, and Jansen? You did, okay. It's all in favor.
Okay, great, thank you. Now we're perhaps revisiting. I thought we already appointed Celinda, but can you, we're appointing Celinda Greer as the Hickory Ridge representative to the Columbia Association Senior Advisory Committee. Laura, can you address that, please?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of my confusion. I thought she was solely appointed by the Columbia Association Board, the
Okay.
Senior Advisory Committee, but she also needs to be appointed as the Hickory Ridge representative by the Hickory Ridge Board.
so
Right.
the process is that the board would, our board would appoint her, the senior advisory committee would then appoint her, and then it would go to CA to appoint her. It's a 3-step process.
Okay, well, I'm happy to move this process along. I've worked with Celinda when I've done my duty on the Residence Architectural Committee. So I move that we appoint Celinda to be the Hickory Ridge resident to the Columbia Association Senior Advisory Committee. May I get a second?
Seconded.
Deb is seconding. All in favor? Raise your hand, please. It's unanimous.
Yep.
That's excellent. All right, thank you very much. Which brings us to item 6D, election policies, procedures, and forms proposed by the special committee. Before we start our hard work, first of all, what do we think about having Jessamine do her report now? Okay. All right, Jess, we moved you down till after new business, but since that's probably
Thank
gonna
you.
take a while, I'm gonna move you back up.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay. Well, and thank you. Sorry I was late, but I had another work meeting that ran late. So, anywho, so what's going on with CA? The big stuff is the draft budget is out and is available for people to review. It's on CA's website, and there is another opportunity to provide online feedback. They have a survey. I think it's a survey that's up where you can chime in, and I can put the link to that page in the chat after my report. But that's, you know, we haven't discussed it yet since the draft budget has come out, but we'll start having those conversations at the next meeting. And the piece about that I wanted to just focus on for a minute is the 6-inch tot lot, obviously. Obviously the CA board has gotten a lot of feedback from Hickory Ridge residents on this, but what I was told by Dennis Maddie, you know, this is part of the capital budget. So it's not clear to me, the capital budget that's in the budget binder that is online does not go into, it sort of has like a line item for tot lot replacement and repair that's about $500,000. I'm assuming that they have not included the $200,000 in there for the Twin Towers option. So I am going to reach out to Dennis and try to get some clarification as to what the breakdown of that amount is, how much is going where, and then how to get either money added or reallocated. You know, unfortunately, it seems like there's going to be, they're saying it has to be board approved to make that change, which means then I have to attempt to convince everyone on the board that this is important. Obviously, they have all the feedback, but I'm trying to figure out the best way for me to do that. And part of that is me being a little bit of a noob at the budget process and trying to figure out, you know, when is the best time to sort of speak up on that and say that this is important to my village. and, you know, ask that that be included in the capital budget. So I have put out a couple feelers. I wanted to just let you guys know that I'm on top of it and trying to figure out the best way to make it happen, since it's not a part of the operating budget, it's the capital budget. So that's what, like I said, my next step is I'm going to try to find out what's already included in the budget, and then I'm going to talk to staff about what would need to happen in order to get that funding added to the capital budget, and we'll take it from there. So I'll do a little more digging on my end, and probably I'll just shoot an email to Laura and Christine when I have some information that I can share. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else going on. No, we had a work session. Some of you guys, I think, tuned in to Jen Terrasa's explanation of her bill. I think that's pretty much it. You know, we had some updates. As you guys know, there's been some restructuring, so the new budget reflects those changes as well. Any questions? Or
I have 2 questions. I encourage you to look at the closed caption transcript or watch the beginning of this recording so you can make yourself aware of questions and comments that Mr. Schwartz had on some wetlands mitigation and redevelopment projects.
okay.
With CA, and he had some questions directly for you. And then also I did view your last work session where Jen Terrasa discussed her bill. And I thought she did a great job explaining that her intent was to get some transparency in homeowners association elections without being a burden. Many of the existing CA board members recounted how they had come up as either being a board member of their village or through their CA directorship, that they had run in several elections and that most of them had never spent money. And so they were glad to see that Ms. Terraza was trying to bring some sense and organization to disclosure requirements. I was particularly glad to hear Jenny Thomas suggest that you know, if there is money in elections, perhaps a $250 spending limit would be more than enough. And I believe it was Mr. Bolton who said that anybody who's concerned about a couple of forms reducing participation or discouraging folks to run for office, the fact that they would, the time that it would take to fill out any of those forms would be much less than it would take to go knock on doors and seek contributions. So I thought it was a very good discussion. Ms. Terraza made it very clear, and the whole purpose is to bring some transparency with and letting homeowners associations make their own rules rather than risk having to abide by rules that the state makes, which could be very onerous and include standing up campaign committees and treasurers and more burdensome reports. So thanks for that. Thanks for letting us tune in.
Sure. Did you have a question or?
I was just responding to your report.
Oh, okay. So no other questions. Okay.
Sky has her hand raised though.
Yeah, I have 2 comments. Owen Brown is having some work done, and I'm sure the term I'm going to use is incorrect. Stream erosion abatement. And I think that's being done by CA. And I'm wondering if the $70,000 that we and CA have together to improve 1, 2, or 3 of those specific areas we had talked about in the past. I just don't want nothing to happen this year. And for us to lose the $70,000 towards that, if that could be put forth into next year's budget, that would be great, but I just don't want any of those 3 items to be lost, because we're almost at the end of the year. We have 3 more months left.
This
So-
might be an oversight on my part, but I emailed Dennis, Maddie and John McCoy about our $70,000 to be spent on watershed issues in Hickory Ridge. And they are reaching a point at which they're ready to decide how they're going to spend that. They were just waiting for some more ducks to come into a row kind of thing. So I should have forwarded that email to you. I'll forward it to you. And I told them I would follow up with them in 2 weeks to see how things were progressing.
That's fine, thank you. And I also was present at the CA meeting in Toto and listened to Jen Terasa. She is all for the simplest solution possible. And she specified, I went to 2 meetings that she spoke about her Senate bill. So I'm not sure if she said the same thing in both meetings, but what she is looking for at a minimum, it would be just a simple statement from candidates stating who they got their donations from and what the donation amounted to, and also another statement about what the expenses were. And it could be 2 pieces of paper that the candidate signs and submits. So that's my understanding. I think it's a great bill. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any more questions for Jessamine Duval on her report? Questions or comments?
Yeah, I guess we can table this until the tot lot discussion later, but I mean, I guess I am a little bit concerned. And yeah, it seems like maybe we should chat more offline, Jessamine, or later when we discuss the tot lot about what, if anything, we should be doing right now or asking residents to do. So.
Yeah, I agree, Christine, and I'm also a little concerned about it as well, as to how difficult it will be to get it in there. So that's why I'm going to sort of do on my end, find out as much as I can, and then touch base with you guys and see what needs to happen.
Great, thank you.
And Lisa, you said that you thought Alan Schwartz had a question for me. I see him on the call. Alan, if you want to just email me after the meeting, I'm happy to answer any questions you have, certainly to the best of my ability.
All right, thank you, Jessamine. Our next item on the agenda is, again, the special policies, procedures, and forms proposed by our Ms. Hannon, thank you. Proposed by the Special Election Committee. Before we get started going through our questions and discussing the work of the committee, I want to give a huge thanks to the members of the committee who spent the last 3 months and many long hours working on their research, reports, recommendations, listening to residents' comments, receiving their comments in written form. I believe there were 7 meetings in total, the first 6 meetings and 1 final meeting, Laura, is that right? 6 or 7 meetings.
Yeah, a lot. I can't remember.
You had to attend each one, where residents were able to speak at 3 different occasions during each meeting, where residents have been able to submit their written comments on different versions of the committee's interim report, final report, and documents. And that has continued through today. Laura has been sending us all of the residents' comments. I've read personally all of the residents' comments from each special committee meeting. I attended each special committee meeting and heard the residents' comments. And so I look forward tonight to making some progress. But before we make progress, I would be remiss if we did not thank our chair, Bill Inglis, and our co-chair, Rona Schwartz, and all of the members who worked so diligently, Doug Steinel, Mark Chaikin, Greg DeRoche, Iris Mars, and Jim Lesh. Just thank you all so much for helping us on the path for what Delegate Terraza is trying to do at the state level. I think we should all be proud that we are on that train. Secondly, I want to thank all of the public members who have taken their time to attend the meetings and speak out during the meetings and really write volumes of paper with their comments. Again, I read every single one. I found them very helpful, and so thank you all. I also want to thank Laura, who has kept us together and kept us moving, attending every meeting, helping produce all of the documents, collating comments. Fabulous.
You're absolutely right.
I think we need to mute Ms. Hannon. And then as we start going down our review of the documents, I want to say that I've heard a real diversity of perspectives on many of the issues that we'll be talking about tonight. And that's a good thing. It's a testament to our committee and our community's robust engagement. And that we've been able to hear from so many voices in writing and in person. I've heard a diversity of views about whether we need to be actually concerned about the influence on our election of interests with a financial stake in our village policies. I personally think that we're seeing plenty of reason to justify our concern. And I know that not everybody shares that concern, but amidst the diversity of perspectives, I also think the subject we're discussing tonight gives us an opportunity, a real chance to work together from and towards some shared values that help guide us through these issues. And those values to me are fundamental. They're first, equal opportunity, access, and fairness. And I hope we would all want to make it so that any member of the village with an interest and a commitment to serve could win a seat on our board regardless of their personal financial means or their access to funding from others. I believe that creating equal opportunity and a level playing field for all our elections can and should be our group North Star, and that can guide our deliberations and decisions upcoming. And if we do that, I don't think we can fail. I think we'll succeed in creating a real healthy foundation for vigorous civic engagement and effective leadership for Hickory Ridge. Now, before we get into the business of tonight's, I want to talk about logistics. We obviously have a lot to cover. We have 18 recommendations before the committee that we've been asked to address, as well as 6 documents. In order that we might get through the material in an orderly and efficient manner, I propose that we spend up to 5 minutes discussing each question, which would total 90 minutes to cover them all, and follow with a discussion of the documents. Before we start, though, I do want to address one issue, and that is an issue that I've heard in a comment that I've heard the suggestion that I might recuse myself from questions 1 and 2 that the committee dealt with. Those questions deal with residency issues for candidates and board members. And the suggestion proposed that there was a conflict of interest or an appearance of a conflict of interest. And I think that suggestion reflects some fundamental confusion about the concepts of conflict of interest. So I want to take a minute to discuss that. And basically, in plain terms, a conflict of interest can arise where a person can derive a personal benefit from a decision or action that they take in their official capacity. An appearance of a conflict can arise if a reasonable person would think that the decision would benefit personally that individual, even if it actually wouldn't. So I want to make it clear, I cannot derive any personal benefit from involvement on any of the issues of the 18 questions covered by the committee's work. All of the questions relate to the conduct of future elections and future board operations, and I am clearly ineligible to either run as a candidate or serve as a board member going forward. Since I cannot derive any personal benefit from any of the decisions before us, there is no conflict and no reasonable person could perceive a conflict. But as with all other questions, I have no conflict regarding them questions, but because questions 1 and 2 involve residency issues, and residency was an issue during my tenure, in order to expedite our board's discussion and movement on these issues, I am letting everybody know now, I have chosen to abstain from both discussion and voting on questions 1 and 2, which deal with residency. So with that in mind, I suggest that we turn to the questions in order. I think many of them were unanimous recommendations from the board, and I imagine that many of us will also unanimously support them. But I hope that, and so we'll be able to get through some faster than others. But the first 2 issues, which deal with residency, I'm going to now back off and let somebody else invite the discussion and the votes on those. Do I have a volunteer?
Before we
can we
go to
finish
that, Sky
talking-
has had her hand up for a while.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, can we finish talking about process? I do not want the board to be limited to a maximum of 5 minutes on any of these. This is the first time that the board will have discussed these issues. The special committee did not discuss or debate the issues in their meetings. They did in their subcommittee meetings, not in the committee meetings as a whole. And I don't see the necessity of moving forward quickly. Some of these are very serious issues that other villages have started discussing before us and will not come to a decision in this term. And so I think that limiting tonight's discussion or any discussion to 5 minutes on any one of these is a detriment more than a benefit. However, I do agree with you that some can just whiz by.
I would actually jump in and say there's a resident that just noted at this discussion.
Sorry, Jansen, we're not recognizing chat notes unless a resident raises their hand. Each resident has the opportunity to raise their hand and speak for 1 minute on each subject. And Laura, can you remind everybody how we're treating the chat and the vote that we took, that board members will not participate or bring up?
Continuing, there's a overlying issue of whether or not this conversation needs to happen right now, whether it should not be devoted to fully to another meeting. And that's a sentiment that I also share. It's been broached before, and just look at the comments that have been received by some of the residents that have sent in some of their comments. There's a overlying question that I'm wondering: has our legal counsel, our general counsel, provided legal review on any of these various amendments? And if not, why not? That's something very basic, something very easy. I know every board meeting we thank in excess the individuals who donated their time, and that's great that they donated their time. There are many members of our community, whether it's the architectural committee, that sacrifice their time and their evenings, including our board members, to volunteer. So I am curious as to why doesn't this get sent over for review from our legal counsel? And I think because Sky said there's some issues of process we need to address, and I think that is the fundamental threshold issue of process we need to address.
Thanks. Other thoughts or comments from the board?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I think that the process to me that makes the most sense would be to go through tonight and have our discussions and, you know, bring up whatever issues, you know, if issues come up, it seems like we would, you know, address that at that point. You know, like I don't see a reason why anything has to be reviewed by legal counsel at this point. I'm not really even sure what they would go ahead and review because we haven't taken any action on anything. That's just my feeling on it.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I really don't want to take a vote on anything tonight. Again, this is the first time that the board will have discussed any of these, and I believe there are 19 issues. When CA has their meetings, they have a working session, one meeting, and the following meeting is they take a vote. And I'm not stating that very clearly. And I do know that some of the other villages work the same way. They bring something up for information and discussion under new business, but then they spend the next couple of weeks or the next 4 weeks until the next meeting thinking about it, asking the residents. That's the time for residents who are aware of the issues to contact the board, and then a decision is made. I certainly hope that for those reasons, we don't take any votes tonight, or we don't vote on every single one tonight.
Thank you, Sky. I will just remark that it has been our board practice to both bring up and vote on issues at meetings. What I'm going to suggest—
And I have disagreed with that. I have never felt that some of the time constraints that have been imposed upon us were necessary. I think, on the other hand, it's necessary to take time to think about the issues in order to make a wise decision that will affect the future.
Thank you, Sky. Any other comments from other board members? Okay.
Yeah, I'll just add, I think, you know, I think that I'm not, I know that there's some controversy on some of these issues, but I think a lot of them are very common sense. And you know, I feel like there is, you know, a reason to move this forward, to get some of these things in place that are just very sensible, and, you know, before our next election. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. Why don't we just knock them out, Sky? And then if there's a problem with one or two that you have an issue with, or anyone, then we table it and then broach it at the next meeting. But there was how many meetings and how much time, and everyone had at least 3 different opportunities during each meeting to discuss stuff. So I mean, I can't imagine. I really am trying to fathom what the holdup would be on your end. Why do you need more time?
As I've stated, the board has never discussed these issues. The special committee as a whole did not discuss or debate them during committee meetings, only in subcommittee meetings. And I think it needs to be part of the public record that we do have discussions. But I totally agree that some of them we can just knock out.
Why don't we just start the process? And if there's some we need to table and revisit, then let's do it.
Okay, with that in mind, I move that we move forward and start looking at the questions, act on the ones we can. And since I am abstaining for questions 1 and 2, did I have a volunteer to walk us through those? I see Christine. All right, so I'm out. I'm out till question 3.
All right, so I had a conversation a little bit earlier with Laura about this to try to, you know, be as organized as I can to get us through this. I'm hoping that these are not going to be controversial issues. So let's open the discussion on question 1. The statement is: candidates for village board who ceased to be members of the association prior to the election should remain eligible for candidacy. And the committee recommended unanimously against that proposition. And I am personally in agreement with the committee. So does anyone else have comments on that?
Can we define members of the association?
Yes, I think
questions
that would
are
be
being
defined as,
asked for the residents, even though the board members may understand the answers and why I'm asking the questions. It's to educate the residents who are in attendance or who will listen to the meeting later. So that's why.
yes. So I believe that would be defined as candidates for village board and the Columbia Association representative. Someone correct me if I'm wrong on that.
No, we're still on question 1, right?
Yes. You asked for definition of
When Scott says
members of the
Hickory
association,
Ridge.
sorry. Members of the Hickory Ridge Association, Hickory Ridge Village.
Which are people who own property in the village of Hickory Ridge and rent property in the village of Hickory Ridge. That's what a member of the association is. So I guess the question is, do we keep the bylaws the same way they are right now?
So if
Any more comments?
is someone else speaking?
I was asking, is there any board comments? And if there's no board comments, how about any community, excuse me, any residents? Anybody have anything to say?
No one's raising their hand.
So can we rephrase it that candidates who move, who sell their property or whose lease is up before the election, can they still remain eligible?
Well, Sky, right, the
I
bylaws
want to make
state,
sure that everybody votes the way they want to vote, because the wording on some of these is fairly complex.
you guys could make your own motion. So you could just make a motion to keep the bylaws the way they are right now, where all candidates must be a member of the association to run for office.
I'll definitely motion that.
At some point, we have someone who wants to speak,
Yeah.
probably before a vote is taken. Oh,
So Deb made the motion that we should keep the bylaws as they are, that all candidates must be a member of the association in order to run for office.
Excuse me, Laura, there was someone named S down that had their hand raised. I'm not sure if they took it down or if they just.
It's down now.
Okay, Donna, did you want to speak or was that an accident? Oh, in support of, okay. All right.
So I guess maybe I'm confused, but I thought that this would require a change in the bylaws to say that like they are not eligible if they move prior to the election. Don't our bylaws not currently say that? I thought we were amending them to be more strict and say that if you're a candidate and you move before the election, you are then no longer eligible. Whereas right now, our bylaws say if they move as a candidate before the election, they could theoretically remain eligible.
You're right, Christine, but, and this is something that you guys can discuss about it, but if you choose to, so someone has to be a member to be a candidate, and then you want to say that as candidate, you must remain a member of the association during that entire period of time. That's the point you're trying to make.
Right. It seemed like the recommendation from the committee was to amend the bylaws. And I was just trying to, like, we have a motion on the table, I think, to just keep everything the same. I'm wondering if if that's what everybody wants to do, then we can continue with that motion.
I agree too.
And
I mean,
maybe I shouldn't speak to the committee, but my understanding from the committee meetings, hey Jess, I'll get you in just a sec, was that they recommended that the bylaws remain as they are because they interpreted this topic to be someone who is not a member of the association could be eligible as a candidate. That's the way my understanding was that the committee interpreted it. So they felt all candidates should be members of the association the way they are currently. And so they recommended to keep that bylaw as it is now.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jess.
I'm gonna remove the motion and we'll talk.
Okay.
Okay.
I was just going to say that, you know, the way I have always interpreted those documents when I was running elections was, you know, you have to be a member in order to be a candidate. I think you could probably argue either way, that you could interpret that as, okay, so are you a candidate on the day that you submit your, you know, your statement and you apply, or are you a candidate the entire time until the day of the election? So I don't, you know, my thought would be that the way the bylaws are written now is adequate, and that maybe there's some sort of clarification that could be made in the manual that it sounds like everybody wants to have, that could sort of say, this is what we mean when we say this, if that makes sense. And now I see Jim and Rona have their hands up.
Yeah, hopefully they can clarify for us.
Rona, you had your hand up first.
Yeah, we're on question 2, and the committee said basically it is not to change anything. So the document said that they can stay on the board if they move out of the village. And so we voted that they are not to terminate if they are no longer living in the village.
Sorry,
Because-
Rona, we're on question 1.
Wrong question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. You're fine.
Okay, I'm sorry. Well, anyway, you got my answer for number 2. If you have any questions about number 1, I'm here. Thank you.
Jim, did you want to say something?
Sure. Let me try to bring a little clarity to the topic. Question number 1 would not require a change to the bylaws because, as stated, to be a candidate, you must be a member of the association. And in my role in the past as election chair, my common sense interpretation of when a candidacy stops is at the day of election. So you're a candidate until such time you are either elected or not elected to the position for which you're running. So in simple terms, question number 1 would not require any bylaw change or anything else, because to be a candidate, you must be a member. On the other hand, question number 2, clarifying whether or not once elected, you could be removed from office when you cease to be a member, would require a bylaw change or amendment.
Sky?
I think we also have to define renter because that has been an issue in the past.
It's someone who provides a valid lease. That's the definition we've gone with before.
And in the past, the lease has gone to either the chair of the election committee or to the general counsel.
Well, we don't run by the general counsel.
I'm sorry?
We haven't, I don't believe we've run them by the general counsel. I think as long as someone submits a
In
valid
the
lease.
past, I think several years ago.
I don't know. Jim's got his hand up now.
Yeah, the question of whether or not you have a valid lease has been responded to many years ago by CA Legal Counsel. If you did take the time to read through all the stuff and recall, there were at least 2 legal opinions offered by CA counsel detailing exactly what constitutes a valid lease. And in years past, when that question has come up, and it has come up on several occasions, I have simply referred to those legal opinions and the elements that the legal opinion stated must be present in a document to be a valid legal lease. For example, it is a contract between 2 parties, the owner of the property and the lessee. It must be for a defined period of time. Okay, it could be a 1-year lease, could be a 5-year lease, et cetera, et cetera. And there, is a requirement that, if I remember correctly, and forgive me for not recalling the exact details, but it has to be legally binding for the term of the contract. And so when I've reviewed leases in the past, if it contains those elements, and maybe some that I am forgetting right now off the top of my head, then I've judged it to be a legal lease. On the other hand, if there are elements not present, because we have had instances where parents want to, give the lease to their kids. And it's like, mommy says I can live here. Well, no, that's not a legal lease. And so when, I've had things like that in the past, I have not allowed them because they didn't fulfill the technical requirements as outlined by legal counsel. So
I think is that enough, Sky? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. We don't have to define it here, but it has to have a definition somewhere, and by council, that's great. Thank you.
Joel?
Hi, everybody. As I tried to point out before offline and other meetings, the Articles of Incorporation answers some of these questions. On page 2, it defines it members as being an owner and a tenant, and thus is a tenant having a written lease from an owner in which such individual is named as lessee, and 2, delivers an executed copy of such lease to the board of directors, which, like my village, I assume is rarely actually done. It then says no person shall be entitled after he ceases to hold an interest in a portion of property, which would apply both to the owner and the tenant. So before you amend the bylaws, make sure you look at the Articles of Incorporation.
Thanks, Joel.
I'd just like to bring up something that has been brought up before, in that if you are a homeowner, the village staff can verify that. If you are a renter, the village staff cannot verify that, so the renter needs to bring a copy of the lease into the office. Just for clarification.
Okay, so in terms of a motion on this, I think what we're coming around to is that we agree with the special committee's recommendation on question 1, and we want to adopt that. Is that fair to say?
I agree with that, but I also see what James is saying, because he's saying that the only way you can become part or even run for the election is you must be a resident, right? Or yeah, so if you're not a resident as of the day of election, then it's there.
Right, right.
But I do agree with, yes, once you
Okay.
become, right. So,
Okay, so I'll take a crack at a motion here. So I move that the board adopt the special committee's recommendation on question 1, and that the recommendation being that candidates for the village board and the Columbia Association representative who cease to be members of the Hickory Ridge Community Association prior to election day should not be eligible for candidacy.
I second it.
come on, boy.
All right.
Okay.
Everyone's in favor?
Yes.
Sorry, guys, I'm scribbling and counting at the same time.
It's
Okay,
400.
okay, got that.
All right, so moving on to question 2. The statement is the term of a village board member should automatically terminate when they cease to be a member of the association. And the special committee voted 4 against and 2 in favor. Let's have a discussion on that.
So I'd say leave it as is. We've already had legal opinion on it. And, you know, this past election, there was a lot of people running, but prior to that, it was very hard to get positions filled. So it's such a short term. I say no.
Yeah, I agree with the position of the special committee. I think it's, you know, it's a year term. It seems very disruptive to me to, you know, force somebody to resign and have to deal with that that kind of mess. And as Deb pointed out, I think we had legal opinion on it. It makes sense to me to accept the special committee's recommendation here as well.
I disagree with you both. I think a year is a long time. When I was in Afghanistan, it was a long year. And even though something may be legal, does not mean it's necessarily ethical. I believe that if someone must be a member of the association to be a candidate, then that person must be a member of the association to be a board member as well for the entire term. When somebody moves out of the village, they are no longer a member of the association, no longer paying the annual CA assessment. They have no stick in the fire. And yet, even though they are no longer paying into CA, they could still, as a board member, vote on how to spend funds that we get from CA. So I am not in favor of issue number 2. There is at least one other village that requires all 5 of their board members to remain members of the association for the length of their term.
Thanks, Guy. Anyone else want to put comments in?
Several people have said that there was past legal counsel advice, but I want to be very clear to all the residents. The reality is this special committee was done with regards to changing the current law. So the general counsel opined on the way the law was currently written, specifically in the articles of corporation and the bylaws. And there they had some ambiguity, and the general counsel construed that towards the fact that an individual that was no longer a member of the association could remain. We have the opportunity now. This is what this whole special committee was purportedly supposed to do. So I think it's disingenuous to then say, hey, we have advice on general counsel when we are literally dealing with a special committee whose sole purpose was to make recommendations on what should be changed. So this is definitely something that I know that the special committee recommended against changing it. I can opine as to why, but unlike several others, I won't just make specious allegations. But the reality is, this is now the board's opportunity to make a change with regards to whether or not someone who is no longer a resident should continue to serve and make decisions on behalf of the residents.
I think we have a couple of residents and also Sky raising their hand. I don't know who was first.
I think Miss Hugh was first.
I would like to just support what Jansen said. I don't see how you can vote for question number 1 and then vote against question number 2. And additionally, question number 2 was not and unanimous support by the committee. This whole thing was looked at by a whole group of people, and it was not unanimous like question number 1 was. The residents of this village want people on the board who represent residents. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
I think Gretchen was next.
Hi, I just think similarly to Sky and Jansen, but even if it's legal or it goes along with the bylaws, I don't think it's ethical for someone who's not a resident to be on the board. And no matter how you feel about it, I think all year, this situation has been really disruptive to the meetings and the focus for the board and the community all year long. So it's sort of taken a lot of the time and effort that people could have put into the community, which is just incredibly disruptive. So I don't think it should be allowed. Thank you.
Thanks for your comment. You want to go ahead, Sky?
Yeah, I just want to clarify for everybody and remind everybody that if the board votes to change the bylaws, it will have to go through our attorney for proper wording, among other things. And then it will be placed on the ballot in April, so the village residents can have the final say. Is that correct, Laura?
That has been the procedure in the past.
I think we have one more resident.
I guess that's me. Hi, everybody. I just also wanted to just second Jansen and Sky here and say that I believe that it's not ethical for somebody to continue to be on the board if they don't live in the village, even though it could technically be legally acceptable. So I would be in favor of changing it. Thank you.
Do you want to go ahead, Sky?
Yeah, and I hope my final comment is that I believe this was written in 1967 when some businessmen were the first members of the board. And after the, anyway, either they couldn't find enough people to run for the board in each of the villages that very first year, so they stated that only 2 of the board members needed to be village residents, but I believe they had the intention that that would be changed as soon as the villages got populated. And it looks like Jim is going to add some more information.
To continue what Sky was saying, yeah, if you look into the history of all the villages during the development period, when the developer, in the case of Rouse Company, was in fact setting up the legal documents, they clearly recognized that you know, if to go through the county subdivision process and file all the legal documents, most of that had to be done before a single building was built on the property. And so, you know, allowing members of the association to serve on the board was a practical matter back in the day. And to Jansen's point, absolutely, you know, you do have legal counsel saying that under the current rules, there's nothing that precludes somebody from continuing to serve when they are no longer a member. What I stated earlier was that if you say that you don't want people to continue to serve once they no longer are a member, would in fact require a bylaws change.
Okay, Jim,
Yes,
We're just trying to limit everybody to a minute on each topic. So we got that. Thank you so much.
you're welcome.
Okay, so yeah, I think everybody who is in favor of changing this made a lot of great points here. I personally don't have super strong feelings one way or another. I think that, you know, a lot of this, you know, if we voted tonight to change it, right? Like Lisa is not going to get kicked off the board because of that vote. I just want to put that out there. This is totally about future, you know, future decisions. This is not, we shouldn't be considering this, you know, from the perspective of Lisa. And many of the other villages, I think as Sky said, there's only one that does not allow any non-residents to serve on the board. So I don't, you know, we're not some wild outlier here. And for me, I think, you know, what the committee put this work in, they made their recommendations. So, you know, after the discussion, I think I'm gonna make a motion that we adopt the special committee's recommendation on question 2, that the term of a duly elected village board member or CA rep whose election has been certified remain as currently reflected in the bylaws.
I'll second that.
Thanks, Deb. All right, should we go ahead and vote?
No,
All
there's a
in-
discussion. Jess has her hand up.
Oh, sorry, Jess, go ahead.
After a motion is seconded, there's always a discussion. Thanks.
Thank you, Sky.
I would just suggest that, you know, while I certainly appreciate your wanting to sort of get it done, that since there seems to be a fair bit of both resident and board pushback on this, that this might be one of those issues that should be tabled. And that maybe the discussion, you know, it should be brought to determine, you know, to confirm with the attorney that a bylaws change would be required. And it just seems like it requires more discussion, since there seems to be a lot of people who don't agree with the committee's recommendation.
Yeah, I do appreciate that. And I think that if it seemed like there was going to be a shift in one of the board members' opinions, I mean, I feel like we've all had a long time to think about this issue, to go through the recommendations and the discussion from the special committee. I think a lot of us attended the meetings of the special committee. I think we all reviewed comments from the residents on all of these topics. So I feel like tabling it is just putting off the exact same vote that we could have tonight. So that's my take on it.
I think there's a motion on the floor that has been seconded. It sounds like Jess wanted to amend the motion, but didn't exactly state that.
Well, I don't know that I would amend the motion. I mean, I don't think it should be voted on tonight. You know, or if it is to be, I don't know. I just don't think it should be voted on at this time. I think, you know, either that or the motion should change to be, you know, to further explore it. Because this seems to be a situation where the most of the feedback that we've gotten from residents is in opposition to what the committee recommended. And so I feel like it's, you know, since this is ultimately a question that would have to be voted on by the residents, I think we have to give it further evaluation. I mean, ultimately, it would be, you know, we're doing a disservice to the residents if we don't continue the discussion where we've heard so many people say that they do have strong feelings about this. So I don't think it would be a smart move for the board to go with the committee's recommendation at this time.
Hey, Laura, if we did nothing and just let it stay the same, then
My
no
hand,
voting.
my hand was up first, Deborah.
Oh, I apologize. I'm sorry, Sky. Go ahead.
I think there are 3 possible alternative scenarios here. If someone were to be on the board, were to move out of the village, and wanted to remain on the board and was absolutely wonderful and everybody loved that person and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. That's one scenario. A second scenario is the same movement, but the person was not a good board member, didn't study the issues before the board meetings, didn't read the board packet, didn't take part in the discussions, was very disruptive in meetings, then that's the opposite of the first scenario. And the third scenario is somewhere in the middle. So I think the vote, not only of board members, but of residents in April, would be how much you think scenario one would be valuable versus the absolute opposite scenario, how much damage that could do to the village. And what, it's a risk benefit analysis. Which scenario would be most likely?
I would just finally, because one, this is the reason why I thought this should have been a work session, because we're only on question 2, and those are 2 of the easier questions, but it's clear that if anything, the motion should be to let this go to the ballot, let the residents decide this in the upcoming election. It's clear that once we've removed it from the handpicked special committee, that it's clear there's a lot of diversity of thought among the community. So I think we give it to the people and let them decide.
And Deborah wanted to make a comment when I interrupted her.
No, I apologize for taking your turn, Sky. So what my thought is, or my thinking is that whether we vote to change it, well, when we vote to change it, if it happens, then it's going on the ballot anyways. And either you or Jessamine said, I apologize for not remembering, that most of the residents want that anyway. So if that is the truth, then that it shall be. And then they'll have the opportunity on the ballot. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Just go ahead.
No, I was saying, Deborah, the current motion was not to change it.
Repeat that, Jansen.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. The current motion, if I understood it correctly, was to not make any change. And I guess we could maybe rule on that motion and then determine whether or not the motion to let it actually go to the ballot is one that could potentially pass.
So to be clear, my position is no. So where did we get lost in the juice?
I think we should just vote.
Yeah, I think Jansen's point is you could vote on this motion to adopt the recommendation of the committee that duly elected board or CA representatives can remain serving their term if they move out of, are no longer a member. But then you could vote again if you wanted to put it something to the ballot for the election separately, if you wanted to do that. Like if you didn't want to decide it yourselves, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah.
No,
I think let the current motion play out.
If the board votes to change the bylaws, then it has to go on the ballot in April and the entire village votes on it. And I need clarification as to the motion again.
So I can restate the motion and then we can vote on it. And then I think Laura's suggestion was that in the future, we can decide to put it on the ballot and let residents decide it. So the motion was that the board adopt the special committee's recommendation on question 2, that the term of a duly elected village board member or CA rep whose election has been certified remain as currently reflected in the bylaws. let's go ahead and vote on that.
You can call for the
Favor?
vote.
Okay, so all in favor?
Deb and Christine. Against? Sky and Jansen. Got it.
So the motion does not pass.
No.
Yeah, does not.
Alternatively, I in turn will then make a motion that the term of a village board member should automatically terminate when they cease to be a member of the association. Is there a second?
I second it.
If there's no discussion, can we call the vote?
Can you repeat the motion?
Yes. That the term of a village board member should automatically terminate when they cease to be a member of the association. That would then necessitate a bylaw change, which would then be given to the people in the upcoming election.
Understood.
So I don't know, look, Ms. Paris, will you call it? Or do I call it? 4?
Christine does, I think.
Oh, sorry, I apologize.
Okay, okay, so all, so I'm very sorry. Can you restate it one more time for me?
Yes, ma'am. My motion is that the term of a village board member should automatically terminate when
And
they.
CA representative.
Pardon?
And CA representative.
Yes, NCA representative, thank you, should automatically terminate when they cease to be a member of the association. If this motion were to pass, this would then necessitate a change to the bylaw, which would go to the residents in the upcoming election.
Okay.
You know, I don't.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I forgot. It's my job to call the vote. Okay, so all in favor.
I think
of-
Deb had her hand up. I just wanted to make sure Deb.
But yeah, thanks, Jen. Well, I was just thinking that is there a need for a ballot vote, even if next year's board election committee would make that decision anyways?
No, the board would not.
They would not?
In order to change the bylaws, it has to go to the village election.
Okay, okay.
So very, very, very quickly, so the bylaws are similar to what we would call a constitution or the charter. In order to make a change, whether it's on a local, state, or federal level, to make a change to the constitution or the bylaw or to the articles of organization or the bylaws, it's something that has to go to the voters of that particular body to make the change. So I think what I'm trying to do is ultimately, based on the intensity of the discussion, ultimately get it to the voters and let them make the decision and not us make the decision. You know, power to the people.
Well.
So do you want to call the vote, Christine, maybe? Unless there's more discussion?
Yeah, I think we can just call the vote. So all in favor.
I mean, yeah.
Okay. Sky, Christine, and Jansen, and Deb, are you in favor too, or?
I believe so.
Okay.
I have a question that maybe Laura or Jim Lesh could answer. Is there any other way for something to appear on the ballot? For example, I think the words referendum, if you get a certain number of signatures from the village, could something appear on the ballot?
I would have to review our documents for that, but nothing comes to mind off the top of my head, Sky.
Okay,
Emily,
thanks.
do you have something you want to say?
Yeah, I have a question. I don't know if I can speak as a resident, but I do have a question regarding number 2 as a resident. Can I ask the question? I'm not sure if
Go ahead, yeah.
that's okay. So I have a question in terms of, I would feel more comfortable approving this. But I wanted to know if there's any reasons for the board member leaving the village. If a person got divorced, it's not their fault that they have to relocate and find a different place, So in my opinion, there are reasons beyond someone's control that they would need to leave the village. And so I'm wondering if there's any sort of extenuating circumstance in the comments that would lead a person to be able to continue on the board, even if they didn't live in the village, if that makes sense.
I don't think we have the ability to decipher, to make that decision.
It's either yes or no.
Depending on how the bylaws are and how we do or don't change them. That's my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
Well, for the first motion, Jansen, I think, inserted the word automatic. And for the second motion, I don't think that word appeared in the motion.
I have it written down, but I wrote it down the first time around and then added a little bit here and there as we went along.
I think Alan Schwartz has his hand up.
Okay, so I think I'm changing my mind here. I think that we should have more of a discussion as a board before we decide whether it should go on the ballot. So is there something that we can do? Can I like call for a revoke or something?
The vote's already been taken.
So there's no way to revoke it?
I don't know. You might be able to make another motion to remove that from the ballot. It has to go through legal counsel first. And we have a couple of hands ups. They may answer it.
Alan, you had your hand up. Do you want to say something? 1 minute.
I do. It's a controversial issue generally, but as corporations go, a short-term membership on a board is usually not interrupted by someone moving or changing their status because it creates tremendous corporate instability. And it also raises the question about tenants. If a tenant has a lease that expires on December 31st, then unless that lease is renewed, the voters would see them as not someone who is eligible to serve their full term. So there are some peripheral questions that I think need to be looked at very carefully. And this is irregardless of the circumstances involving Lisa Dean. But corporate continuity is very important to ensure that the business affairs of the Village Association goes forward.
Thanks. Jess, did you want to comment?
Excuse me, I just wanted to add that it's worth noting that the intent behind, the change so that someone has to be a resident or a member to be a candidate was added at some point because technically the Articles of Incorporation have that information that says only 2 have to be. And at the time that that change was made, the intent was to ensure that no one who was not a member would be able to serve on the board. But when we ran into the situation that happened with Lisa, she was a member at the time of candidacy and not at the time of serving on the board. And we discovered, it sort of brought out this loophole that was not intended at the time that change was made to the bylaws. And if you speak to former board members, they'll say the same thing. So I don't see this as much of a, oh, we're going to totally change the way we do things, as basically correcting a situation that was never intended to happen, whereby you can be a candidate, you cannot be a candidate unless you're a member, but you can serve. if you're not a member. The intent was that only residents, members of the association could serve on the board. So I don't think that there's anything wrong. And my other point was that, just because you took a vote to make this change, there are many, many steps, right? You voting to make this change does not mean that it's happening. Because it's a bylaws change, it does have to go to the people. So ultimately, the board is not really making that decision. They're making the decision to continue down the path to allow residents to make that decision. So I think, I don't want you guys to overthink it too much in terms of, you're basically just moving to sort of explore it more, because you may talk to the attorney and the attorney may say, you know what, here's how it should be worded. Ultimately, the board is again going to have to approve that language before it goes on the ballot. So it's not a done deal at this point, is what I was trying to say to you, Christine, because you seemed like you were unsure. And I think that's okay. I think the idea is to move forward and to allow it to continue to unfold and ultimately go to the residents.
Yeah, I would like to see it, go forward and unfold. I think can I move that it, be discussed and, go, yeah, can we move to discuss it more?
Well, I think it's going to have to be discussed more, because in order for any change to make, Laura's going to have to go determine what exactly is going to have to change, talk to the attorney, probably get suggested wording, because we changed the bylaws when I was village manager, and this is what we did. We changed the bylaws so that if there was an uncontested election, you didn't actually have to hold an election. You could just appoint the people. So there will be multiple opportunities, not even opportunities, requirements to discuss it again, because you'll have to decide on what the wording is, all that kind of stuff. So it's not, I don't think the motion to, to make the change is really a motion to make the change. It's more of a motion to continue the discussion, for lack of a better way of saying it. I know that doesn't make any sense, but because there's so many steps in the process, it will have to come before the board again. So if after talking to the attorney and after drafting it and having it ready for the ballot, the board ultimately, will have the responsibility to approve that wording.
Yeah, we have I guess a neighboring resident's hand up, but before we quickly jump over to him, I wanted to note at the beginning of this, we thought we had I believe, unrealistic expectation that we could just fly through these. I think these first two were supposed to be the most simple and the easiest. Destiny mentioned change. I would respectfully ask this board entertain, maybe we go discuss maybe 3 others for this evening and enter into and then schedule a work session or a special meeting to go over, dedicated specifically to the other points, because this will clearly go until 1 o'clock in the morning, if not later.
Yeah, I think we can, as you said, keep going and see where we end up as we go forward here. Should we hear from Joel?
Before Jess said it, I was going to say that somebody has to write language in the actual bylaws, and I am looking at Town Center. They did this amendment in 1980, and it says to qualify as a member of the board of directors, the individual should be a resident of Town Center. If a member of the board gives up residence to Town Center during the term of office, such action causes the member to vacate the office, and basically the same provision applies to the Columbia Council rep. So
thank you.
If you need example, I would hope you take a look at Town Center.
My hand isn't working for some reason, so I'm raising it here. If there's no one else ahead of me.
Go ahead.
Okay. I think I would have to agree that maybe we should just, with Jansen, just table this and broach it in a private board meeting or something, or even a public, doesn't matter to me, but I think I might need some more clarity because, if Danson's running or, an officer or whatever, and he moves because for whatever reason, should we make him leave, even though he might be an excellent leader and he's taking care of our community? Should we make him leave because he was blessed with a bigger house or unfortunate situations made him leave? And I think I agree with I think there's a lot more to be discussed. So I would have to agree with Jansen that we could table number 2 for now. I'm on board with that.
First of all, I kind of stated the 2 or 3 alternatives. One, that this is concerning a person who is an absolute wonderful, supportive member of the board. Another alternative is the one you just mentioned, Deb, someone who isn't pulling their weight, and anything in between. And these are all subjective opinions that will have to be made. However, I would like to say that the motion was voted upon, and so whatever we do now, and I agree that it demands further discussion, but we can't erase the vote. So
So I think
Okay.
everybody's had a say on this a couple of times, I think. So, and you guys voted. So why don't we move on, and then I'll explore, language and stuff, and then we can come back to you with language and ideas to, and proposals. Like, this doesn't have to be set in stone at this moment. I'll work some stuff out with Susan and run some stuff by her and then come back to you. Does that sound reasonable?
Good. Yeah. Thank you, Laura.
Okay.
All right, Lisa, are you back on board?
I'm back on board. And in light of how these first 2 questions went, and in light of the fact that the CA board does limit their time for each issue, I hereby move that we have had plenty of written and oral comments from residents. And I noticed, Laura, I'm going to ask you to help residents abide by the rules. They get to speak once. And I'm seeing on each agenda item, and I'm seeing folks speaking multiple times on this agenda item. So I'm going to move that we limit discussion, board discussion to 5 minutes, and then we decide if we're going to vote. All in favor, or can I get a second?
Yeah, I'm on board. 5 minutes?
5 minutes. All in favor?
On board.
Discussion first before the vote.
I'm sorry, discussion.
Discussion.
Yeah, we already talked about this earlier in the meeting. I'm adamantly opposed to that. It's true that we have read comments from the residents, but the board has never discussed any of these. I also believe that items 1 and 2 would be very quick, and they did not turn out to be. So I assume that if we put a limit on any of the others, we will just get into more frustrations by a lot of people. I think things need to be discussed at least the first time. Maybe the second time you can put a time limit on it.
Thank you,
I
Scott.
mean, I'm fine with the 5 minute, 5 minutes of discussion, and then, we're not saying we're definitely going to take a vote, but we decide if we're going to vote. That seems very reasonable to me.
I also just want to continue to reiterate, I believe that this type of weighty, important discussions are better reserved for a special session, a work session. Something needs to be set aside from this general meeting where we can actually go through this and not limit. Maybe 2 special sessions broken up into 3 hours where residents get the opportunity to come, comment, opine, because maybe people couldn't make it to these special sessions. So just a thought.
Thanks.
Maybe we can see if there are any other items that most of us agree on.
I have a motion.
Leave the hard ones.
That I'm going to call for a vote. That's been seconded. So Laura, can you repeat the motion?
You made a motion to limit board discussion to 5 minutes on each topic.
And we had a second by whom?
Deb.
Okay.
All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed?
I'm opposed because these are much too serious issues to only spend 5 minutes discussing.
Thank you. Laura or Emily, I know y'all have a lot of timekeeping responsibilities, but if you could keep it to help us keep us to 5 minutes, I'm gonna start us again on question 3.
And does that mean that not all of us will be able to speak?
It depends on how considerate we are of our neighbors. I could make a further motion that we limit it to 5 minutes and divide it equally among the 5 board members. Can I get a second? Deb, all in favor? Limit it to 5 minutes. Each board member can divide it equally.
I'm down.
All right, question number 3.
I think there were 2 people opposed. I was opposed. Were you, Jansen? Okay, the vote was 3-0.
Thank you. Question number 3, online voting should be discontinued. The special committee voted 3 in favor, 2 opposed, 1 abstention, that online voting should be discontinued. Here's my 1 minute. I think online voting should be discontinued. The committee in their comments and reports that were posted online and made available to residents made good points. Also, especially Professor Doug Steinel, who was a 40-year professor of political science, addressed this issue. I don't think that it's safe enough now, and there is not a number of risk that I think we should deprive our residents of safety. That's all I have to say.
Raising my hand, if I can go next. I just think there's a lot of pros and cons to doing it, allowing online voting. And as long as there are cons, that means there's risk. And as long as there's risk, I say no. And I agree with the special committee.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other comments?
I disagree with the special committee's recommendation. Last year was our first year voting online, and we were in the midst of a pandemic. We are still in the condition of a pandemic. There are risks to everything. There were no problems last year. And for those reasons, I am voting against the recommendation of the special committee, plus the fact that this board has looked into online voting every year for more than 5 years, and we will continue to do so.
Jessamine?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I mean, obviously I don't have a vote here, but I do want to say that I do disagree with the decision to discontinue online voting. I do also respectfully believe that Christine should recuse herself from this question because she was so heavily used as a consultant on this question and presented a case against online voting before the committee was formed or shortly after. So just to avoid the appearance of anything, conflict, but I personally agree. I disagree. I think that online voting so far has been safe. I think it makes it much easier for a lot of people. And since we're still in a pandemic, I think we should continue it.
Thank you, Jessamine.
I said Jim has his hand raised.
Oh. You want to give Jim a minute?
Laura, I'm going to remind everybody that this whole report is a agenda item, and each resident gets to speak for a minute. This is the 4th time Jim will be speaking. So each resident gets to speak one time and for a total of 1 minute.
He's on the committee that prepared the report. He
The
might be
committee-
providing clarifying information.
We have their report.
What you don't have is the reason behind my objection. And my objection in short order is that I believe it should be part of the election manual, and the village board should decide year by year whether or not the risks outweigh the benefits.
Thank you. That was part of the committee's discussion. Okay, any other comments from board members?
Yeah, so I mean,
Interject one more. I'm sorry, my hand won't go up. I'm sorry, Christine. What about absentee ballots? How about those?
What?
Absentee?
I can't hear you.
Yeah, I don't know.
Think about absentee ballots. Yeah,
Mhm.
we have that in the budget, Deb. It's budgeted to print out and mail absentee ballots to every household in the village.
Too much money. Okay.
Well, no, we have it. We have the money. It's budgeted. We're good to go.
We do have it.
We do have it. It's all in the budget. We will be doing absentee ballots, direct mail to every household in Hickory Ridge.
So why is this even an issue?
Okay, thank you, Deb. Any other comments?
Yeah, I would follow.
so I will, oh, go ahead, Jansen.
I know you want to address the issue of, I guess, the recusal or whatnot, but I just wanted to follow Deb's point very quickly, just to say, she earlier noted how, if there's there are pros and cons to everything, and if there's a possibility to abuse it, she would be opposed to it. And I mean, the same can be said for the mailed-in ballots. So, however, the pros outweigh the cons. So those are the reasons followed with the, yes, this is all our opinion, Lisa. You've had a chance to state your opinion, and now I'm stating my opinion. So thank you for allowing me to state my opinion. And for the reasons that Sky, for reasons that Jim, who has been serving in this role for so many years, opined, I think it does make the most sense to let the board, let future boards make the decision on these issues.
Okay, and we've kind of hit our 5-minute mark for discussion at this point.
I'm going to exercise my prerogative and let Christine address Jessamine's claim that she has a conflict of interest.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I think I have no more or less at stake here than any other board member or resident. And I think that any reasonable person would I can't see how any reasonable person would think that expertise would be a reason that someone should not cast a vote on an issue. Can I also give an opinion on this, or are we done?
I asked you to address it, so go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to say I'm relieved that the committee saw the dangers inherent in online voting and decided to recommend against using it in our elections. I think the critical point to emphasize here is that while some may find online voting slightly more convenient than our current status quo, where we do provide mail-in ballots for free to every household in our community, the price of using online voting is the integrity of the election. Even if no hacking occurs, if somebody chooses to challenge the results of the election, there's no way to demonstrate the election was not interfered with. And I think it helps to consider that there are any number of ways that one could make it easier to vote and increase participation, and nobody would ever do them in an election. You can't call your vote into an election. You can't send somebody else to vote for you if you're sick or disabled. Those things are not allowed because you can't have a free and fair election without sufficient accountability. And so there's a standard that you need to have, and a standard that you need to be able to prove that your votes have integrity and that people's votes are legitimate and being counted as they should be. And online voting does not provide those assurances or meet that standard. Online voting does not meet a reasonable threshold for the safeguards that you need to have a free and fair election. And if you can't trust the integrity of the election, there's no point in even having an election. So again, thank you to the committee for the time you spent on this. I know it was one of the more contentious issues, but I obviously feel strongly that you did the right thing, and I support not using online voting.
Thanks. Laura, I have a motion to make. I'm going to read it out loud. I move that the board adopt a special committee.
Someone has their hand up. I just wanted to point it out real fast. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Someone
There's a resident named Chris, well, I don't know, there's someone named Chris Rucci with a hand up. Lisa, should we give them 1 minute?
Sure.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, you know, if you're gonna hold everyone to 1 minute, I would say keep people to 1 minute, because that
Thank you.
way over 1 minute.
Thank you. Here's my motion. I move that the board adopt the special committee's recommendation that online voting be discontinued and that online voting in village elections be discontinued effective immediately, and that voting in village elections shall be conducted by in-person voting and absentee ballots unless otherwise required by law, and that the election procedures and guidelines be updated to state that, quote, voting in village elections shall be conducted only by in-person voting and absentee ballots unless otherwise required by law, and that the election procedures and guidelines be further updated to state that it is recommended that this election procedures and guidelines be reviewed by the board of directors each year before the announcement of elections. And finally, that the election procedures and guidelines, the instructions to candidates, and other relevant documents be revised and or created to reflect the foregoing. Can I get a second?
Seconded.
I have 2 seconds. Can we vote? All in favor of my motion, please raise your hands. All opposed? Laura, that's a 3-2. Okay.
0.
Thank you, Sky.
I
Okay.
just have a process question. Some of the things that you mentioned in that motion don't those refer to other questions that are further down, or am I misunderstanding? Like reviewing the guidelines annually and all that kind of stuff?
The motion is passed, discussion is over, and also these were all dealt with, that those documents be revised to reflect what we just voted on. Laura, after the meeting, can give you a copy of the motion, but it said that the guidelines be updated to state the recommendation that it be, reviewed, and that the guidelines and instruction to candidates and other documents be revised or created to reflect the foregoing. So it was limited to this question 3.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to question 4, which is a verifiable chain of custody of paper ballots should be established and documented. The special committee passed it on a vote of 6 in favor, 0 against. Is there any discussion? Okay, in absence of discussion, I move that the board adopt the special committee's recommendation that a verifiable chain of custody of paper ballots should be established and documented, and that the election procedures and guidelines be updated to clearly reflect and document the existing established verifiable chain of paper ballots. Can I get a second? I got 2 seconds. All right. All in favor of my motion, please raise your hands.
Discussion.
I'm sorry. Discussion.
I assume that the how will be arrived at by the staff. The process will be arrived at by the staff rather than the board.
I believe, go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, we do have a procedure for a verifiable chain of paper ballots right now, Sky. This is just, it's in the election procedures. It might need to be detailed a little bit more just to be for clarity, but there is a procedure in place.
Good.
Okay, further discussion? Okay. All in favor of my motion, please raise your hand. All opposed? Abstaining?
I'm abstaining because I still think this process we need more resident input. We need, and the fact that the chat is this is blowing up on that very issue is proof positive of that. So we need to, so I'm abstaining on those grounds.
Thank you. And again, I draw your attention to all the opportunities residents have had to comment. Moving on to.
I have a comment about that. The residents had no idea and the board had no idea that we were going to vote tonight. The agenda said review. So I think some people were blindsided by that, and that may be why they are frustrated by the limit to the discussions.
Thank you. Laura, will you please confirm that the agenda item did not say review?
It says, election policies, procedures, and forms proposed by special committee.
Thank you. All right, moving on to question 5.
That actually doesn't prove anything. It just says what was an agenda item. It doesn't say whether it was discussion like all the other things or whether it was something that we were voting on.
Yeah, that was a topic, not the action.
Okay, thank you, Sky. You represented that it said review, and I was clarifying it for the record. Moving on to question number 5, which is candidates should have the ability to run for office as a director and CA representative at the same time. That question failed with the committee, with special committee voted 5 against and 1 in favor. Discussion?
Yes, I believe that someone should be able to be a candidate for both offices. This has already been taken care of by a CA regulation that states no CA rep can also be on a village board. So what we are doing is just solidifying what CA already has in place. And if someone were to win both, they would have to choose one or the other, as already dictated by CA's regulations.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay.
S has a
Sorry,
comment.
I wanted to make a comment. Sorry. So Sky is technically right? There is a rule in place that would prevent someone from serving, but I do also believe that this is kind of one of those loophole situations where I don't think the intent has ever been for someone to be able to run for both, but technically there's nothing that says that they can't. So my suggestion would be maybe that this requires a little further research, only in the sense of process, as to what I'm not clear on is what change would have to be made. Is this something that can be handled just through like the election guidelines and rules, or would this be something that would require some sort of bylaw change?
Well, since it is already prohibited by the CA board, I'd like to read my motion and see if that answers your question.
Okay.
Would be, I move that the board adopt the special committee's recommendation on question 5, and that effective immediately, no resident may run for office as both a director and Columbia Association representative during the same village election, and that the election procedures and guidelines, the instructions to candidates, and other relevant documents be revised or created to reflect the foregoing. Does that help, Jess?
I guess, but it still doesn't really answer my question as to whether a bylaws change would actually be necessary. I feel like that would be something we'd want an attorney to chime in on, but that's fine. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. I'm just not sure that we shouldn't have someone double check to make sure that that's enough, if that makes any sense.
Laura, do you want to add that to a list of items, and then we can decide which ones we send to the attorney upon vote?
Sure.
I see a resident's hand.
No, I don't see one. I think we're good. Oh, wait. Lynn Hannon just raised her hand.
I have one question. First of all, I object to having a minute I feel, and I've felt from the beginning, that this board wants to jam everything down our throats. That committee met during the holidays, during a pandemic. Many of us, I stayed up till midnight trying to make sense of all these board documents. And I think you should at least have the courtesy of letting us talk. We did not have an opportunity to talk. The committee did not say why they recommended anything, nothing. They didn't say, we got a vote, yes, no, yes, no. Half of their representations were wrong, and you're shutting us down to a minute. Why? What's the rush? I really want to know what's the rush. And don't tell me it was that we had a lot of minutes, because we had 6 weeks and we didn't get any preliminary report to comment on till really late in the middle of Christmas. And I missed the first deadline because,
Lynn, that's
all right, I'm shut down. And don't, I don't even want to hear it.
Thank you. I'd like to remind residents that it is well, Laura, I'm going to ask you to remind residents what the longstanding board policy has been about residents' comments, and perhaps remind them that under this board, we've further expanded it for 3 times. So can you please, for the record, remind residents what longstanding rules we're operating under?
Yeah, so you get 3 minutes at Village Voices. There's 1 minute of resident discussion per agenda item and, per person. And then there's 1 minute during the feedback session at the end.
But I can't, but you're preventing me, that it's not my discussion, it's that I can't build on your discussion.
Okay,
I'm building
understood,
on a
Liz. Thank you
discussion.
for the
No,
input.
I am going to speak. I am building on a discussion that is among.
Thank you, Ms. Hannon. Laura, I received several pages of documents from Ms. Hannon's.
Yeah, and now you're just, okay, it's a done deal. I'll give up.
And then she followed that up with other ones. So thank you all. Thank you so much for all of your comments.
You know what? That's BS.
Thank you. Okay, so I read my motion before, but let me.
I think I was next. I had my hand up. I would just like to remind everybody that on 2 separate occasions, I had requested the special committee devote an entire evening or an entire meeting to oral comments by the residents. The first time my suggestion was nobody commented on it, it was ignored. The second time my suggestion received the comment from the vice chair that there was not enough time to schedule that. So I tried, and I also believe that we are acting too fast on a lot of these. The residents did not know we were going to vote on these tonight, and I didn't either. So that's it.
Thank you.
And Lisa, Rona has her hand up right now too.
Thank you. And but before Rona goes, would you please remind residents of all of the opportunities that they had to speak and contribute in writing?
Sure, we had accepted comments. I think we posted documents on December 3rd and accepted written comments for a period of time. We posted documents again on December 21st and accepted written comments all the way through New Year's Eve. So that period of time. And then the final report of the committee was submitted and posted January 7th, I think, or 8th, right around that. I would have to look at our documents and see, and we were accepting comments all the way through last Friday.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. Sorry, Rona.
I've been sitting here now for this meeting and last meeting, and I've been really quiet. And quite honest with you, I am very angry to hear from Sky Anderson, and especially Ms. Donahue, of accusing us of not listening to residents, not listening to board members who participated. And Sky, you participated numerous times at our meetings. We read every single thing that Ms. Donahue wrote and others wrote. We took it under consideration and we decided as a committee what to modify. And we have modified repeatedly our documents and all the other questions. So I am tired of listening to Ms. Donahue, you ranting and raving, and also Sky Anderson about how we did not do our job. We did an amazing job in the short amount of time that we were given. And also we were told that you would be voting on these documents tonight. Thank you.
All right, we're at 9 minutes on this discussion, but we still have ample hands up. Samantha Link has her hand up.
Hi, I want to be quick. I just want to say that I think that we just deserve more discussion on these issues rather than having every committee member have just 1 minute. I think that there has been a lot of work that has been gone in regard and a lot of thought from other residents as well on these issues. And I just think it's more respectful to the work that has been done that we don't be limited by a 1 minute timeline. And if it has to go to another meeting, I think that would be fine. I think that everyone should have an input into what is going on here. So thank you.
Thank you. And just to let everybody know, we will be having a special meeting on February 7th to continue this work.
What? Is that our next meeting? February 7th?
Didn't we discuss at the last board meeting that we would look at having a special meeting on February 7th or 8th, Laura?
Did we decide on February 7th or 8th?
It was discussed at the last meeting that if this meeting wasn't enough, that perhaps we should call a special meeting for the 7th. Yes.
All right, so I'm gonna, in interest of expediency, review my recommendation on question 5, which was candidates should have.
Could you concentrate that and make it easier to be understood?
I move that the board.
Actually, a resident has their hand up, and I don't know if we've gone to them yet.
Okay, I can't see that. So Laura, somebody new has their hand up that has not spoken?
It's Miss Donahue. She spoke on the issue already.
Thank you.
I have had less than a minute. And I'd like to apologize to Ms. Schwartz if she feels attacked about this. But Ms. Dean has just said what everyone has been saying here tonight, that there should be more time and discussion about this. The fact that the committee met and reviewed things for approximately 6 weeks over the holidays has been put forth and is very, very relevant to this discussion. So thank you for having a special meeting on February 7th.
Thank you. All right, my motion is I move that the board adopt the special committee's recommendation on question 5 and that effective immediately, no resident may run for office as both a director and Columbia Association representative during the same village election, and that the election procedures and guidelines, the instructions to candidates, and other relevant documents be revised or created to reflect the foregoing. So we've had discussion. May I have a second for my motion? Christine seconds it. Now let's vote. All in favor of my motion, please raise your hand. Thank you. Opposed?
I'm opposed because this is already covered in CA rules and regulations.
Thank you. Abstentions? Thank you. Okay, moving on to question number 6.
Ms. Dean, before we move on to question 6, considering now that there's this special session or essentially a work session that's set aside for these discussion topics, and considering that there have been several residents that are advocating for either the opportunity to opine on this some more, I think it would be in the best interest of, one, the work that the special committee has done, and also in the best interest of transparency and process to table the rest of these items and continue them at the work session.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. I don't think we labeled it as a work session, but let's keep moving and see how far we can get.
Let's
Question,
see how far we can get until what? What is the, or is it something arbitrary that you will decide when we've gone?
let's
on
set a
the-
cap of no later than 11 o'clock. We've gone past that in the past. And so let's set it an 11 o'clock one. And many of these are quick. We can get through them. So let's.
Aren't items 6 and several of the others related to the forms? I think they should be taken up at the same time.
Thank you.
Maybe we could go to number 12 and 13.
I'm going to proceed with the questions themselves. The committee voted on the questions and then they voted on the documents last, and I think we should follow that. Let's vote on the questions and then we'll consider the documents last. It's sort of like making the policy and then voting on the fine details of how that policy is presented and implemented.
Okay.
Thank you. So question number 6 is, there should be a cap or limit on the amount candidates may spend on their campaign in order to enable all residents the opportunity to serve on the village board or as CA rep, regardless of their income or resources available for campaign expenditures. The special committee passed this question in a vote 5 in favor, 1 against. Discussion?
I am opposed to this. I don't think there is a need for a cap or a limit on the amount of campaign expenditures. I don't, to my knowledge, nobody in the past has been prevented from running due to financial situations. I think we're making a mountain out of a molehill.
Thank you. I believe Delegate Terraza, who has, and Miss Jenny Thomas, who have suggested limits, might disagree with you. Is there other board comment?
Actually, Jen Terraza did not address limits. She addressed just the fact that candidates should be submitting their donations and their expenses. And again, she suggested 1 page for each would be sufficient.
Thank you. I stand corrected. It was Jenny Thomas. Other board comments?
My hand's coming up because I can't raise it. I mean, I know when I ran, I spent $15 on one sign. And it's, so I think there's no problem with the what, 500 or 50, no, 500 contribution, 500 of our own money. Is that right?
It's a,
there is no limit specified.
wasn't actually in the documents. There
Not
is
in
a
the motion, and-
$500 cap specified.
But we're discussing the motion now.
Scott, you're saying I'm wrong?
No, I'm saying that we're discussing the motion now, and the motion does not have.
I've not made the motion yet. I've not made the motion. Here's
the
the
recommendation does not have a dollar limit.
Okay, but then I thought I read that, but I at least, well, I know that it should even be lower. I heard, I don't know, maybe 250, but I can't cite where I read that from, so.
Other board discussion?
Yep, I agree with the recommendation of the committee on this. I think that a cap or a limit is a very reasonable way of making the elections fair and open to everybody, no matter, you know, what their financial situation is. So I think this is something to support.
Great. Do you have a suggestion? The committee recommended $500. Do you have a suggestion on a cap?
I mean, I think when I watched the CA board meeting, I do remember the recommendation of 250. I would be open to that. I think on the documents, the cap that the committee had chosen was 500.
Oh, maybe that's where I got it.
Thank you.
I
Laura?
think there should be a cap. I think if there's a third party invested in one particular person that wants to do flyers or billboards or any type of signage, then that is definitely an advantage of, somebody who lives in the neighborhood, works a 9 to 5 and may not be able to afford those luxuries for that advertising. So I think transparency is necessary. I think we should have a cap.
Other
Jess has her
comments?
hand up. Jess,
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear you call on me.
sorry.
I just wanted to agree with Sky that I think it's a solution without a problem. But I know I don't have a vote, and I know my comments won't be regarded, but I just felt like I needed to say something.
Thanks. Sky, is your hand up again, or is that just your background?
It's neither.
Okay. Other comments? So I would like to make a motion. I move that the board adopt the special committee's recommendation on question 6, and that beginning with the 2022 village elections and continuing thereafter, there will be a $250 cap on expenditures made in connection with candidacy and campaign for each candidate for director and each candidate for Columbia Association representative for each election year, and that the election procedures and guidelines, the instructions to candidates, and other relevant documents shall be revised or created to reflect the foregoing.
Second that.
All in favor, raise your hand.
Discussion. You have a couple of hands up.
Thank you. Discussion?
Joel Horowitz has his hand up from Harper's Choice. Joel, I think that, I don't know if you've commented on this stuff yet, but you've got a minute.
I not comment on this one, except I guess privately to some people. I started looking into these with some of the municipalities after Jen Ross's bill, and I will refer you to the Cumberland City Charter. I found they have a $500 limit for their 4-year election cycle, divided evenly with $250 the primary and general election.
Thank you.
That's for a bigger city.
Thank you.
And Jess has a comment too.
I was just going to say that I think if you're going to put a cap on it, it should be at least $500. I bought, I think, I don't know how many signs did I buy, 25 signs or something in 2020, and it was $212. So like that would be all you would be able to do. And if there were a contested race and you did want to go out and promote yourself, it would make it hard to do that with $250, especially since the cost of things has gone up significantly since the pandemic began. So I would argue for 500 if you're going to cap it.
Thank you. Other comments?
This is Jansen. Just to follow what Jessamine said, just to print signs and to print walk literature in terms of going to Kimco's and printing just those, and that's not even including other materials. That's going to be, that approaches, especially in a village as large, which has abysmally low turnout in these village board elections. 250 is nowhere near enough, especially, and I mean, it's almost hypocritical on some level, because this cap will then favor individuals who have been in the community for a longer period of time, as opposed to newer transplants. And this ultimately has a chilling effect on newer voices, like mine, who've come into the community, who also want to make sure they have a voice as well. So I strongly urge this board to think about the implementation of a cap on individuals who want to come out of their pocket because they want to serve their community.
Thank you. What's our timing like?
We just hit 5 minutes.
Okay.
Can I say something, Liz?
Yep.
I think Jansen actually made a good point, especially with inflation and having the new guy needing to come along and spend maybe a little pocket change to beat the old guy that's been there forever. But I would be okay with 500.
Okay. Okay, I will withdraw my original motion and amend it to say, well, I'm not going to withdraw it. I'm going to amend my motion to say 500.
I second it.
All right, all in favor of my motion, please raise your hands. All opposed?
I'm opposed because I feel this is making a mountain out of a molehill.
Thank you. All right, I believe that question number 7 is complicated when it comes to the documents, but not so complicated when it comes to the policy. And the question is, there should be campaign expenditure disclosure requirements notifying residents how much money a candidate has personally spent on their campaign. My thought would be that only winning candidates would have to disclose what expenditures they make or what contributions they receive. That will help not to discourage any folks who just want to run, make it super easy to run. But if you do actually win, my idea would be, and we can discuss this when the documents come up, but for my idea would be just winning candidates have to make the expenditure disclosures. So I'm going to, any discussion?
Yeah, that's very surprising. I would think it would be a requirement for every candidate. As a voter, I would like that information before I cast my ballot.
Thank you. My thought would be in interest of the folks who are concerned that documents and filing a lot of papers would chill participation. My thought would be that once the votes have been tallied, the staff or the election chair could notify the candidates who've garnered enough votes to win that they're required to submit a expenditure report or a contributors report, and that they could do so within 24 hours, and that would be a condition to having your election certified.
Right, and I understand that you're just giving some more details about your first statement. And again, as a resident who is voting, I would want to know how much each of the candidates spent, because that would affect how I voted.
Right. And if there's a $500 limit for everybody, it wouldn't be a surprise. Other comments?
So at least you're saying that no one has to provide documentation until they're elected. And then at that point, to be fully vetted, then they need to have the paperwork handed in.
Well, right now, we're just voting on the question of whether there should be campaign expenditure disclosure requirements, notifying residents how much money a candidate has personally spent on their campaign. Until the campaign is over, which means until voting is finished, candidates cannot report how much they've spent because they won't know. You might need 10 minutes before the polls close to go print off some more flyers. So.
But they can make an interim report, say the end of March and the 15th of April, and maybe the 22nd of April, the day before the election.
We can discuss that later when we discuss the documents. And also, let's all be mindful about all of the comments from residents who said a lot of documents being required is going to chill participation. So,
and again, Jen Terrasa just is proposing a simple statement from each candidate. So maybe we shouldn't have talked about that when we're talking about this item number 7.
Okay,
we shouldn't have gone into that much detail since it's not part of the motion.
So I move that any more discussion? Okay, I move that the board adopt the special committee's recommendation on question 7, and that effective with the 2022 elections and continuing thereafter, each candidate for director and each candidate for Columbia Association representative. Well, you know what? I'm just going to stop I'm gonna move that the board adopt the special committee's recommendation on question 7, and that there will be campaign expenditure disclosure requirements notifying residents how much money a candidate has personally spent on their campaign. Can I get a second?
My hand is raised.
Thank you. All in favor?
Can't see it.
All opposed? Thank you. 4 in favor, 1 opposed. Laura, did you get that motion?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Question number 8 was there should be campaign contribution, monetary and in kind, disclosure requirements, notifying residents how much money candidates have accepted from third parties for their campaign. This passed unanimously from the special committee, 6 in favor, 0 opposed. I hope we'll have likewise support. Any discussion?
There was an earlier version of this that I saw that talked about disclosing volunteers. I want to make sure that this does not include, when it talks about in kind, this does not include volunteers, because again, when I ran, I was fortunate to have many of my neighbors and friends that lived in the community that went out with me to volunteer. And if that contribution is going, that in-kind contribution is going to be counted or has to be disclosed, I think it's very disingenuous. So I'm curious as to whether this motion includes volunteers going out with you to door knock or canvass.
My motion includes exactly what I said, but I will draw your attention to the documents that the committee prepared, which specifically includes volunteers canvassing as a reportable in-kind contribution.
But we're not discussing the forms yet.
I know, but Jansen asked.
So
the question.
let's.
All right. Laura, can you reread the motion, please?
Could somebody define third party?
Someone other than the candidate running for office.
And what about the first party and the second party? Or are there no such things as first and second parties? I don't.
That's something we can work out in the documents when we get to those.
Well, no, I'm asking now as part of definition of third party. I'm sure there are people in the village who are less cognizant than myself about elections, and I'm not very knowledgeable.
Okay.
So third party is just somebody other than the candidate.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, it is, Guy. And this motion would include the in-kind, would include volunteers who are going out to canvass with an individual.
I
got a different interpretation from somebody on that volunteer hours you could not assign a monetary value to.
And just to be clear, Sky, you should not be assigned a monetary value to volunteer hours, because I'm not aware of any campaign on the county, state, or federal level that does just that. So yet the fact that we're doing that here on a village association, there's something suspect about that. And I get it. I know that when I went volunteer, I went out with at least 12 people. But so I think this has a very chilling effect on when we claim that we're about transparency and openness. I think this has a very chilling effect.
I will amend.
I don't think we're
man hours, but not assign a monetary value to the man hours.
Christine, did you have a comment?
I might be about to say what you're about to say. My understanding was that we are not defining in-kind contributions as including volunteer hours. That is not part of this motion, and that the committee had a definition in the forms, which we are not voting on yet and have not discussed yet. And so we have not accepted and are not defining what what in kind would mean right now.
But
That
just,
is my understanding.
but just to be clear, if this motion passed, we're going to then define what in-kind means. And part of what was discussed at the special committee was that the in-kind would include volunteer hours.
No, Jansen, I'm sorry. If you look at the documents they produced, they specifically exclude volunteers canvassing.
But the
Okay.
documents are not part of the motion.
I appreciate that, Sky. I can't satisfy you and Jansen, so thank you for both of your comments. Right now, the issue. So
Lisa, I think you read the committee's statement, but I didn't get an actual motion yet.
I move that the board adopts the special committee's recommendation on question 8, and that effective with the 2022 village elections and continuing thereafter, each candidate for director and each candidate for Columbia Association representative will submit a disclosure notifying residents how much money the candidate has accepted from third parties for their campaigns.
I'll second.
Discussion?
Yeah, so this is, this just talks about donations.
This is contributions, right? This is
It's donations, okay.
disclosure of
So-
contributions.
So this is saying that candidates should disclose their donations, period.
That's correct.
Okay, but it doesn't say when. But they have to do it when they're candidates, because when the election closes, they are no longer candidates. They're either winners or losers.
Well, they're candidates until their election is certified. And my suggestion is that until that they will be notified when they've gotten enough votes, they will be required to submit their contribution disclosure, and then a certification will take place, which makes them no longer a candidate.
Okay.
Okay. So, to be clear, and I may not have been, the committee's documents exclude volunteers, and we'll discuss that. Just, exclude volunteers who are canvassing, but that's not on the agenda right now. So all in favor of my motion, please raise your hand.
Before we do that, so this motion on its face, if it were to be strictly monetary, it on its face, it would pass the smell test. I still have some issue with in kind. And I don't know if we need to address the forms first, or even if I could have what is the definition of in kind as it relates to this Hickory Ridge Village Board?
Did you read the documents from the committee?
There's so many documents from the committee, and all that happened in those, and the answer is yes, because in those documents, most of the time it didn't even go into to detail. It just said what the committee voted on and whatnot. And so I have tried multiple times to find and get that clarity as to the definition. If you have that, Lisa Dean, please, let's save everyone's time and let me know what that definition of in kind is.
Well, I can point you.
I think in kind is something tangible that is not monetary.
That's not part of my motion, and we all agreed we weren't going to be going into the details. We can decide on that later if this motion passes.
So we decide on definitions afterwards rather than before.
That's what y'all wanted to do. So I repeat my motion, and I have a second. All in favor? Opposed? Abstaining?
I'm abstaining because it is not clear what the words mean, and no definitions were given.
Dilly.
Okay. Question 9 is there should be disclosure requirements related to campaign activity by third parties, monetary or in kind, where the sponsor of the activity is not disclosed, and whether beneficiaries of such activities should be required to make a good faith effort to discover and disclose the source of such assistance and be recused from matters involving such donors. My only comment here will be that this was discussed at the CA meeting where I believe Miss Jen Terraza said, look, you're going to know if somebody makes you 10 signs and drops them off on your door, who that is. And the question remains, and so if you don't know who is posting signs or posting billboards or printing materials on your behalf, it would be a concern, I think, to the residents. And so that's what the committee was getting at here. Comments?
Yeah, we need a definition of recusal. I can't even say it. And required to make a good faith effort. Who would determine whether or not the effort is a good faith enough? And when would all these disclosures be required to be disclosed? Again, would this be only for winning candidates?
So we've agreed not to talk about the documents. My concept would be, again, that it would be for winning candidates. And the concept would be after good faith efforts and reasonable due diligence. But again, we can talk about all those details. What we're dealing with now is whether we are going to adopt the special committee's recommendation and make that a requirement going forward. Any other comments?
Yeah, I would just suggest that because these particular questions around this campaign finance stuff are so complicated, and the forms are so, there seems to be so many questions about process, that perhaps that these could be tabled to the February 7th meeting, which I assume is happening. And then we could move on to the ones that don't correspond with the forms. So then, because it seems like there needs to be more flushing out on some of these before people feel comfortable voting.
I appreciate that, but y'all put me in a catch-22 where we are not going to discuss the documents tonight. What I suggest is we discuss whether we're going to adopt that policy per my motion, and we can discuss the documents moving forward.
Right, I'm saying table it all till to the next meeting.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I know this motion is currently pending, but I hope whether it's this motion or the next motion, we can actually address the rest of these matters at the special session, work session, the special meeting time that's scheduled.
I'm sorry, Jensen, I can't hear you.
You're breaking up.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's a sign from the universe.
It's no better.
Oh, really? Oh my goodness.
I think Jansen said that he was hoping that we could address further matters at the special meeting on the 7th. I managed to glean that from what he said, I think.
Okay, I have a motion on the table that's been seconded, so I'm going to call for a vote. All in favor of my motion, please raise your hand. Opposed? Abstaining?
I have to abstain because this is too general a motion, and not all the terms are understood or defined.
Thanks. All right.
Just a point of clarity, Jansen, did you oppose? Abstain? Okay.
We're turning to questions 10, which is contributions from third parties should result in consideration of recusal of the recipient from participation in matters involving such donor before the village board if elected. I read comments from residents who suggested some helpful language that makes this clearer. And so do y'all want to hear my motion first or discuss first? Hear my motion and discuss, or discuss and then hear my motion? McJansen, do you want to hear my motion first? Okay. All right. My motion is I move that contributions from third parties defined as individuals or entities other than the candidate themselves. So contributions from third parties to winning candidates will require a review by the board of directors to determine whether such contribution constitutes a conflict of interest or an appearance of a conflict of interest, requiring such winning candidate to be recused from discussion and voting on a matter before the board and involving that third party donor, and that the association's conflict of interest policy, instructions to candidates, and other relevant documents be revised and or created to clearly reflect the foregoing.
Could you repeat that? Is there any way you can make that shorter or more simple? Because you can't say that in one breath. That's way too long a motion.
Thank you, but that's not really the requirement, and I was trying to make it responsive to resident comments, so I will say it again. I move that contributions from third parties, defined as individuals or entities other than the candidate themselves, to winning candidates, so contributions from third parties to winning candidates will require a review by the board of directors to determine whether such contribution constitutes a conflict of interest or an appearance of a conflict of interest, requiring such winning candidate to be recused from discussion and voting on a matter before the board and involving the third party donor, and the association's conflict of interest policy, instructions to candidates, and other relevant documents be revised and or created to clearly reflect the foregoing.
Which board of directors, the outgoing or the incoming board?
Well, it's the incoming board because the winning candidate won't be seated until they are with the new board. And so the winning candidate cannot have a conflict of interest that he or she will be deciding as a board member.
So this will not occur until it occurs, like maybe in July or February. It wouldn't occur in May.
What would occur? The report? What are you talking about?
I think you're talking about a situation that somebody might have, that a board member might have a conflict of interest with.
Right, when they are seated on the new board, that's what I'm talking about.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I don't see that.
Go ahead.
I don't see that happening at the very beginning of a term, because not much is known about the business that will come before the board.
Yes, and the language says will require a review by the board of directors to determine whether such contribution constitutes a conflict of interest on a matter before the board and involving the third party donor. So it's all prospective looking. A candidate is not going to come into office deciding an issue. As soon as an issue is brought up involving one of those donors, that's when the board undertakes this consideration.
Has this ever occurred in the history of the village? I can't imagine a situation in which it would occur.
I don't know. Any other comments?
Jess has her hand up.
Jess.
Yeah, I think that this particular issue is the messiest one that this board needs to decide on, aside from the campaign finance thing. But I would really like to see this board push this discussion to the next meeting so we can wrap up the easier ones that follow this and get to the rest of the regular business and be done here by 11. And this one, I have a lot to say about this one, and I am about done mentally. So I would really like to see this one tabled to another meeting because there's a lot to unpack on this one.
I don't know if you guys can hear me, but I would as well. It's almost 10:30. There's still a whole bunch of other stuff that has to be done. I doubt we're going to table the regular business of the board until the special meeting. But I would strongly propose we address all of these other proposals and motions and do it all at the special meeting / work session, or whatever we want to call it. And I would also, and I'll lastly say, when we started this board meeting at 7:30, and I know we've had a couple where we've gone a little later, but when we started this board meeting at 7:30, we were on 2 pages of residents or guests, and the number is dropping down. So I definitely want to make sure that we are, I mean, I don't know, if we're doing this for the residents and transparency, let's give them a chance to get refreshed and come back.
Thank you for your comment. There's a motion on the floor. Has it been seconded? Can I get a second? Laura, has it been seconded?
I think Christine seconded it.
Okay, all in favor?
I'm on.
Opposed?
Sorry, I had a.
That's opposed? Okay.
I'm opposed because this motion, as Jessamine indicated, should have been discussed. It should have been, I mean, we are literally just passing things, and this feels so very.
It's rubber stamping at this
Yeah.
point, and it's not doing, it's doing the residents a disservice.
Thanks for
And
your
with all
comment.
the talk we've been having on, voters' rights and suppression on a national level, the fact that this is the fact this even has blushes of this is concerning to me. So I would have appreciated the opportunity. This motion could have been tabled, and it could have still have passed 3-2, but we would have at least given the people the opportunity to have been heard.
Thank you. The rest of the questions besides this 11, well, all the rest of the questions are pretty easy and should go pretty quickly. Question
I'm
11.
sorry, did that motion pass?
Yes.
Well, I would still like for this to be a topic of discussion at the next meeting because I do not feel it's been adequately discussed here. So I would like for this particular question to be put back on the agenda. And I think that's a fair request.
What did the special committee vote on this, Jess? I mean, they did their due diligence. What was their outcome? Because we trusted them to do this. So what was their outcome?
Well, I believe their outcome was to have this whole recusal process, but I think there are a lot of problems with the process, and I think it needs to be taken to an attorney.
Okay, thank you. Question number 11 is specific criteria and/or rubrics.
I'm sorry, Lisa, but I've mentioned and Jessamine also mentioned the possibility of tabling the rest of these items until the special session.
Thank you. We have 4 more brief questions. We can get through them and then move on. I'm anticipating doing questions 11, 12.
This is incredibly disrespectful of the volunteers who are on this board. It really is.
Thank you for your comment, Jessamine. Question number 11.
This is how democracy dies.
I'm speaking. Specific criteria and/or rubrics should be established for appointment of village board members or Columbia Association representatives from pool of multiple applicants if an election is not necessary or if there is a later vacancy. The special committee voted 5-0 to pass this. I've been made aware that the board, am I on the wrong question?
Yeah, it was 5-1.
Oh, 5-1, I'm sorry. I've been made aware that our articles of incorporation require that the board of directors vote to fill the vacancies that are created due to lack of candidates or later vacancy. And so this particular question would not be appropriate. However, I have a motion that I'd like y'all to discuss. And my motion is, I move, and my motion deals with, we need to follow the fact that board of directors are the ones who vote to fill those vacancies. But in voting to fill those vacancies, we can recommend that the board consider considerations such as who was the next most vote getting candidate. So please take a moment and listen. And the motion is, I move that in instances involving appointment of a director or CA representative for lack of sufficient candidates or vacancy for any other reason, the board of directors follows the existing provision in the bylaws requiring that the board of directors vote on such appointment, and that in voting on such appointments in the exercise of their independent judgment, the board of directors may consider, among other things, whether any applicant for vacancy ran for office in the most recent election and the number of votes garnered by such candidate, and that the association's manual for board of directors and other relevant documents be revised and or created to clearly reflect the foregoing. It's pretty much, let's keep it status quo, but also recommend that our bylaws, but also like recommend that they may want to consider that criteria.
I request the motion in writing.
All right, Laura, can you put it up? You're muted.
Let me just open up my Word doc. Hold on.
Waiting for her to open up her Word document. Why the desire to force this stuff through at 10:30 when multiple people, residents, fellow board members have indicated that we would prefer that this be done at the special session, at the special meeting? Why the insistence, Lisa?
My thought is that we'll have plenty of details to cover with the documents. We will still have, I think, 4 other questions that we've not dealt with tonight. To the extent we can get through these, we only have 3 more left to go, and that's my response.
Well,
Laura?
if we only have 3 more left to go, why can't those 3 more be added to this next one, to the next meeting?
Thank you, Jansen. I appreciate your comment. Laura, do you want to put it up on the screen?
Yeah, I'm just having a problem.
I make a motion that we table the rest of this agenda item until the
second.
regularly scheduled meeting. We are going on our 4th hour. We had no idea we were going to vote on these items tonight, and neither did the residents.
I second that, because this is foolishness at this point.
We are really exhausted, Lisa.
Thank you, Sky. We've had many meetings that have gone on for this. The constant pressures to make progress for the committee and for progress in the community, I think will allow us a few more minutes on these questions. Laura, do you have?
There's a motion on the floor that has been seconded.
Well, first you asked for, first you asked to see my motion. My motion is on the floor first, so we're going to deal with that first. Laura?
Yeah, I'm having a hard time keeping up between the motions here, Lisa. I'm sorry.
Sure, this is the recommendation on question 11.
Lisa, you have written out your motions in advance, it sounds like. It sounds like you're reading them. Is that correct?
That's right.
Oh, could you just post your motion? And actually, if you have written them out in advance, they should be shared with the board in advance of the board. It should be in the board packet as well.
I appreciate it, but I'm amending these on the fly in response to residents' comments and board's comments and timing issues. So it's nothing that I could distribute widely. And many of my comments are in handwriting. I'm doing the best that I can. I have a motion on the floor. Laura, have you found the recommendation on question 11?
I have it, but I'm having a hard time pulling it up. I'm not being able to pull it up to show, unfortunately, because I didn't do it before the meeting. And that's my fault. I'll be happy to read it, or you could reread it and I could type it. That's my fault.
Okay, Laura, I'm going to let you type that question 11, and I'm going to move on to question 12, which is super.
There's another motion on the floor to table the rest of this agenda item until a time when we have our next regularly scheduled meeting and are not totally exhausted being in the 4th hour of a discussion.
Thank you. Any discussion?
I agree with Sky. This is bordering on an absurdity at this point.
Thank you. All in favor of Jansen's motion, please raise your hand.
It's Sky's motion.
All in favor of Sky's motion, please raise your hand. All those opposed to Sky's motion, Deb, your picture is, you have just a picture.
I had to use the restroom. I was holding it for so long. Sorry. I'm back.
Another reason to table the discussion.
All those opposed to.
I'm relieved now. I'm good.
All those opposed?
Let's just get it over with. Let's go.
Does anybody need to
can't do a good job under such time constraints as being in the 4th hour of a 4-hour meeting.
Thank you.
I think this demands more thoughtful responses from the board.
I
than
agree.
we're
It's
given
irresponsible board leadership to not halt at this point and start again. Whatever time crunch is perceived is artificial.
I have 2 more questions I'd like to cover. All the rest are tabled till the next time. We've also tabled at your request discussion of the specifics of the document. Here are the last 2 questions. Well, Laura, are you working on question 11?
I am.
Okay. Question number 12 is specific election rules and procedures, including but not limited to clear instruction to candidates regarding placement of signs at polling stations, requirement of renter candidates supplying a copy of their rental agreement, and other election-related requirements should be memorialized and advertised as part of the election process. The committee voted on that 5 in favor. Oh no, looks like it's committee voted 6 in favor, 0 against. I'll make my motion and then we can discuss. I move that the board adopt the special committee's recommendation on question 12 and that the association's election policies and guidelines and other relevant documents be revised and or created to clearly reflect the foregoing.
I'll second that.
Discussion?
Trust that the special committees did a good job. That's what we put them in place for. They did it, and I agree with it.
And it was unanimous. It's just sort of housekeeping procedures to get everything together in one place.
At what time do the renters provide their leases? When they submit their candidate statement or any time before the election, day of the election?
They have to submit their leases and have them verified before that they are allowed to be a candidate. So we don't publicize someone as a candidate. We don't put them on the ballot until we verified their lease.
Fair enough.
You don't, okay, right.
So like when you submit your candidate statement, you have to submit proof of living in the village or having a valid lease, and then we verify it through the process that Jim discussed earlier.
Okay.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor of my motion, please raise your hand.
I want to make sure I understand. Don't renters, before they can even, they have to show already that they're renters by showing the lease. Is that correct, Laura?
They do. So if you're a renter and you submit a candidate statement to me, then you have to submit a copy of the valid lease and it's reviewed by the election committee chair, based on the criteria provided to us by the attorney previously to verify that the lease is valid. And then if that is proved to be true, then you are officially a candidate.
So what is this purporting to change then if we already have that on the books?
Well, we
This
did
is
not
an
have
operational
a manual before, so it's a motion to put it all into a written into election handbook. All right,
The staff will create the handbook, is that correct?
correct.
And if the board dictates what goes into the handbook, it kind of defeats the purpose of the staff doing the day-to-day business and the board setting policy.
So
Just
how-
a comment.
So how have all the past elections been done? I mean, they didn't have it. I'm pretty sure when they sent out information about upcoming elections, they have all of this data and or instruction written down. But I mean, oh well, let's just go ahead and vote.
It'll be up to, as the election committee is advisory and the staff operates under direction of the board, they will, just like the board approves resident architectural guideline changes, the staff will create the handbook and we as a board will vote to approve it. So I have a motion on the table. It's been seconded. I'm going to call for a vote. All in favor of my motion, please raise your hand.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Opposed? Abstaining? Okay, last question, then we're going to go back to the one that Laura typewrote. The issue is question 17, and the question is,
Where'd my camera go?
I'm gonna move to
Not number 17.
I'm gonna move to table that. So
Number
let's-
17?
Yep.
That's not the one that Laura is writing up.
No, I had one more left. That was number 17 that I wanted to do tonight. I'm skipping all of the other ones, and now we're just going back. We're tabling the other ones. We're tabling number 17, and we're going back to the one question that you wanted Laura to write out.
I did.
I'm wondering if she could write that out and send it to us, and we could just discuss and vote on it next time. Since it's not ready for us.
I've got a motion on the floor. Laura, do you want to put it up?
Oh, that is a long motion. My goodness.
Thanks, Guy.
Could it be, it's very difficult to understand.
Sky, I'll summarize it for you. This is requiring the board of directors to follow the bylaws in filling vacancies. And when they are following the bylaws, which is they vote to fill the vacancies, it's a suggestion that they consider whether applicants have run in the most recent election. That's it.
Oh, so they don't have to select the next highest candidate. Okay.
No, under the bylaws, the directors have to vote. Directors have to operate with independent judgment. This is just a suggestion that the committee made.
So generally what happens is the board advertises for an open board position. People submit resumes, they are interviewed. So you're saying that the board should also consider the number 6 person and maybe extend an invitation to that person to submit a resume?
It says exactly what this says, and which is what the committee suggested, which was that they consider applicants for vacancy who ran for office in the most recent village election and the number of votes garnered by such candidate. It's not binding on them. It's what the committee requested they considered. And a motion is on the floor.
If it's not binding and merely suggestive, then why even incorporate it?
All right, let's take it out. Laura, take out everything after vote on such appointment, period. I mean, between vote on such appointment and after such candidate. Before and that association manual.
Am I in the right spot in the exercise of their independent judges, this part here?
Yep. It's so it says
all the way to here.
Yep, it says that vote on such a follows the existing provisions in the bylaws requiring the board of directors vote on such appointment. Go up to after that appointment, please.
This one.
Delete that as well, going all the way down to that, and then and that the association's manual for the board of directors and other relevant documents be revised and are created to clearly reflect the foregoing. May I have a second on this amended motion?
Are you suggesting that you also delete that last portion after the semicolon?
No, we want this reflected in the bylaws because there was confusion about how folks should be filling vacancies.
I'm sorry, isn't it already in the bylaws?
Yes, but it's not in the election handbook. I don't know what the opposition to this is.
No, I just think that it's a motion that doesn't need to exist because you're saying we're just going to keep doing it the way we still do it. And I don't know that you need a motion to make sure that that's included in the manual. I think that could just be a direction to staff.
Thank you.
And I also object to that characterization that people are objecting to this motion. People are trying, your fellow board members are trying to understand what you're trying to ram through to us. And so that's why we're asking questions. Those questions are not objections. Those questions are us doing our due diligence, Lisa Dean.
Thank you, Jansen. Evelyn?
And it's Evelyn.
Evelyn, thank you. Evelyn. You're muted, Deb. Unmute yourself.
Sorry. I was wondering if Laura could put it up because actually when I started reading it, I was just slow on the draw, I guess, and I didn't get to read. I want to understand what is now being motioned. Would you mind putting it back up? May I ask that, please?
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you.
So the motion is a status quo.
Yes, as many of the other things we've voted on.
So if it's a status quo, why are we voting on the status quo?
Thanks.
Let's continue to do what we've always done.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor. Do I have a second, Deb?
Yeah, and this is just to keep status quo. I mean, this is to keep as is. Sure. I mean, I agree with that.
We've had discussion. I'm calling for a vote. All in favor of this motion, raise your hands.
Thank you, Laura.
All opposed? All right, then no more questions.
You have to ask for the abstentions, please.
Oh, abstentions? Sorry, I couldn't see.
Yes, because I don't understand why we're voting on certain status quo items and not on other status quo items. Perhaps we should just vote on the entire bylaws as they now stand and the entire articles of incorporation as they now stand, with the exceptions of the motions that we're making. I'm just exhausted and floored. Sorry.
So towards that end, I move that we have a special meeting on Monday, February 7th at 7 o'clock, not 7:30, so we can get things going. Where we will continue voting on these issues and that we will review documents associated with these issues. Additionally, since we have made progress on some decisions regarding policy, we have heard from residents and board members that the documents can be lengthy and difficult to read. So now that we've made some progress on the questions, Laura will work on streamlining them, putting them in order, better language, reflecting what we voted on so far, and we can pick up where we left off. So my motion is that we have the Monday, February 7th special meeting at 7 o'clock to continue these questions and to review the revised documents that Laura will be circulating. May I have a second? I have a second. Is there discussion, Sky?
By review, you mean to vote on everything else?
Yes.
Could you change the, could you please add and vote on all the remaining items? And my personal suggestion to you, Laura, is when you make a motion, please submit it in writing to the board members before the meeting. Otherwise, we just, your sentences are so convoluted. By the time you get to the end, I've forgotten what the first few words were. It's really difficult. We really should have a complete board packet well before the meeting.
Thanks.
And after a motion has been passed, you really can't change the wording of the motion, but I understand that Laura will be trying to simplify it and make any motion just more understandable to the residents and to the board.
She's not changing the motions. She's addressing the documents that the committee prepared. The motions have been voted on. They won't be changed.
Okay, gotcha.
So, there's a motion on the floor about having a special meeting on Monday, February 7th at 7 o'clock to finish voting on the questions and to review and vote on the documents. May I have a second?
Did I think? Did you second that? I think you did.
Okay. All in favor? Those opposed?
This is an hour too late, but I'm in favor of that.
And anybody abstaining?
Me, because I got lost hours ago. This is too convoluted a meeting.
Okay, thank you. All right, we are on to old business. Tot lot.
Okay, so I think that we had a report on that at the beginning of the meeting, or it was discussed a little bit at the beginning of the meeting in Jessamine's report. It sounds like there's some cause for concern on what's happening and whether they allocated money for the tot lot. So I think Jessamine had said that she's going to circle back with Laura and I, and we will try to figure out what next steps are there and what the current situation is, because it sounds like we don't have a full handle on the current situation, and what steps to take going forward.
Thanks. Any comments? Okay, great. Laura, Village Committee reports.
Yeah, so we're finishing up the process with the review of the guidelines, and it should be being presented to the Architectural Committee shortly. Watershed Advisory Committee is kind of quiet because it's winter. They've got stuff coming up in the spring, and Senior Advisory Committee, we talked about Linda and appointed her. And then for my manager's report, I just wanted to say Emily's doing a great job of moving our events to virtual. She did a virtual bingo that went really well. She did a virtual story time on Thursday, which coincided with a snow day. So about 27 families attended. So even though we've been forced to go to virtual events by COVID, we're still getting a lot of participation, which is terrific. And that's all I'm going to say about all that.
Awesome. Thanks. Manager report?
Oh, I attended the Senior Advisory Committee, and the agreement was that I would do that until we had one appointed. We did have a Senior Advisory Committee meeting, and the presentation was on Brightview, which is right on Martin Road, so it's very relevant to our village. And it was, we had someone from Brightview, I think maybe in February or March, And this presentation was absolutely wonderful. Slides, pictures. She talked about costs and everything like that. So I can give that to you, Laura. And it was well worth attending the meeting. That's all.
Thanks. Laura, anything else in your manager's report?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, board comments?
Yeah, I'm wondering if for the next meeting, which is a special meeting, if each of the documents and outstanding recommendations could be their own special agenda items. And that way we could open it up to more oral comments from the residents. They seem to want that tonight. And I think we owe it to the residents to give them ample opportunity to speak to us on their thoughts and feelings and opinions on these recommendations.
Sky, question for you. To the extent that that impacts the length of the meeting, will you be committed to going until we finish discussing the questions and reviewing and voting on the documents? Because
no, there is no reason why a board meeting should be more than an hour and a half long. That was covered in our board training.
Thanks.
And there's no reason we can't table a lot of things until the next meeting. I do not understand the rush, and I am speaking for a lot of the residents who talked to me about that. What's the rush? And as I said before, CA has a work session followed by a voting session, and at least 2 of the other village boards operate that way. I think it's much more effective to spend some time thinking about the information given rather than listening and immediately having to vote.
I appreciate that. And I know other boards you've served on have not followed that. And I'm going to suggest that we keep as we have on all along and keep this as one item on the agenda as we have on other topics that have come before the board.
I'd like to make a motion then that each item that we vote on for the next meeting be its own separate agenda item.
All right, anybody want to second that?
I'll second it.
Call for a vote. All in favor of Sky's motion, please raise your hand.
Any room for discussion here?
Oh, I'm sorry, discussion.
How dare you? I'm just trying to figure out how that behooves the situation. Like, can you explain more? Like, why would that be beneficial for us and our residents?
Because as it stands now, a resident can speak only on one of the recommendations. And I think tonight we've had some residents who were speaking on more than one, and I don't like having to cut off residents' opinions. And I think it's important that we hear the residents, even if it makes going on to a 3rd meeting or a 4th meeting.
Understood. So I heard one of the residents was pretty passionate, and she was highly upset because she felt very rushed over the Christmas holidays, making decisions and speaking the issues. So between now and our next meeting, is that 2 weeks? It's 2 weeks, right?
The special meeting.
Special meeting. Is there a way where we can say, hey guys, here's the information. Let's broach. These are the topics we're going to broach. And between now and then, get your questions together and you will have an opportunity to talk. And maybe not 1 minute, but maybe not an open forum either. Because as you see, people go on and on and on and talk about beating a dead horse. I'm not talking about residents. I'm just saying issues in general, So maybe if we can agree to a time limit while everyone still has a voice, and this gives everybody 2 weeks. So no one can come and say, I didn't have enough time. I can't, you can't, residents, that will give them enough time as well. I know Jessamine also has some time constraints or time constraint issues, right? With some things that you wanted to discuss. So I think this is a win-win for everybody, right?
And also residents will have the opportunity, Laura's gonna put out the revised documents, and Laura, I hope you'll be able to report the status of each question, tell us how we voted, what the motion was, or if it's not been addressed yet. And then residents can use those 2 weeks, as we have received reams of paper with written comments.
And we read them. Residents, we read them. We go through them. They're not falling on deaf ears.
What I'm talking about is the residents want to speak orally. This is a different level of these recommendations. Maybe they have spoken to the committee or written to the committee. Now they are talking to the decision makers at one level, and then there will be another level. And I think residents who want to speak at each level should be allowed to speak at each level. And if they want to speak on item 6 and 10, they should be allowed to speak on item 6 and 10, rather than they can only choose one item to speak on. I'm all for a 1 minute time limit. And I think the residents know that, and they can prepare for that because they know about it in advance. But to get across to them tonight that they could only speak on one of the recommendations, it was a surprise to me. I didn't know that that was going to happen.
I mean, I'm open to true transparency as long as everyone understands that there is a time limit. And then I concur with what Lisa says, because you can't have it both ways where everyone's going to complain about the time, but then everybody wants to have their say. So I think, in lieu of creating chaos, I would not mind what you say, Sky. Everyone, can speak to it, but they're going to have to understand that if they want to speak to it, there's going to have to be time constraints. And that's not to shut them
We have a timekeeper. I think everybody knows that by now.
Right. And I don't want to shut anyone down. I ran for this office to help people. I love my community. I've been here since 1975. This is home. And I want everyone to be happy. But, we do have to have rules in place. So I'm with you, Sky. I'm with you for doing it. And I'm with you, Lise, for having a time limit. So win-win, let's create a scenario so everybody has a say. That's all. I'm good for that. So is there a way we can do that?
Yeah, I'm gonna make a motion that we
I think you have a couple of hands up, Lisa.
Oh, yeah.
I can't see any hands.
Christine, do you want to?
Christine and
Yeah. I just wanted to say, I agree with what Deb and Sky are saying in the sense that I really empathize with how frustrating it is for residents to have strong opinions on things and want their voice to be heard. But at the same time, this is a village board. We were elected to complete tasks, do business, make decisions. That's what we're here for. And when it becomes a hindrance to us, I think that, that's why all the past boards have had more restrictions than we have in place about who can speak and when and for how long. And we have a lot of chances for people to participate. We've had a lot of chances for people to be involved in this process throughout the whole thing. And they have a lot of opportunities to speak. So, while I'm not opposed, if Lisa is okay with it, to having more opportunities or like writing the agenda in a way that more residents can speak during the meeting, I also think that we need to be clear here that what we're doing in terms of limiting residents being able to be involved in board discussions is not unreasonable or without precedent. Like, this is how boards work, and this is how they function effectively to do the job that they were elected to do. And I think that as the chair, I got my turn with like a tiny taste of what it's like for Lisa every single meeting. And it is very difficult to, balance all of that and have all that to consider. And I think that there's a reason why these policies are in place for boards, to keep things organized and to let residents have their say, but also not allow them to stand in the way of getting business done. And so on this issue, I'm going to defer to what Lisa feels like is reasonable for her to handle. And also, you know, I think I would like to weigh Laura's opinion as well. So, because they are the two people who really have to deal with the ramifications of that kind of change.
All right, I'd like to weigh in and say that we keep it as one agenda item. We will allow residents to speak for 2 minutes, and more than that really is, they've got opportunities, they'll have opportunities to see the remaining issues we're going to vote on, see the revised documents that can be distributed. They will have ample opportunity to submit written comments. Laura, perhaps you can post a schedule that written comments should be due by to the board, you know, to you by the 5th, and you'll distribute that, well, the 4th, and you'll distribute them to us by the 5th so that we can have read them all by the 7th. But Christine is correct. We are a board.
Don't forget, this is a special meeting, and the only item on the agenda will be to complete the vote on the recommendations. There will be nothing else taken up at the special meeting. So a lot of that will be taken care of.
And we are reviewing, I believe it's 6 documents.
Voting on them.
Reviewing and voting on them. And I think expanding resident time to 2 minutes is generous. They have the opportunity to look at all of that stuff in advance. They have 3 minutes to speak during Village Voices, 2 minutes during the agenda item, which Laura, I would like to leave it as one agenda item, and an additional minute at the end. We've been lucky to receive reams of written comments. If folks have more that they can say in 2 minutes, please join everybody else who has sent us multiple page, single spaced documents filled with comments on, you know, every question.
So it sounds like that'll be 5 minutes then total for
Hey,
each.
guys, I've had my hand up for like 10 minutes.
You're,
But
Jesse,
your hand keeps going up and down. I thought it was just a malfunction.
No, I'm trying to keep it up.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, wait. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Des.
No, I appreciate your efforts to allow people to have more time to speak, Lisa, but I think the 2 minute thing does not solve the problem. The problem is that people want to comment on more than one issue. And if you allow them one stretch of 2 minutes, that doesn't allow them to, you know, make a comment when that particular item is being discussed. So I would urge you to not take that approach. And I think the other thing that I think is a real problem is people have had, like you keep saying, everyone's had ample opportunity to comment and speak, but I don't think people are feeling heard because their comments and their concerns are never responded to that I've been able to gather, and are never actually considered in the discussion of the issues. You know, we're talking about these particular issues, but no one has gone back and said, well, has anyone thought about what so-and-so said here that we should consider? So I think that's why people are frustrated, because they comment and they share their opinion, and then they just get thank you for your comments, which basically sounds like thank you, but we're not going to listen to what you're saying. So, you know, I think that it would be useful. I think, you know, another thing that we really need to think about is the fact that there is this artificial sense of urgency. I think it would be really useful, and I don't know if this is too much to ask Laura to do, but to try to go through some of those resident comments and really sort of break them down by question. So we can look at, okay, here's what this person said about question 5. We had 5 people who commented about this question and they had these concerns. How are we going to address those concerns? So I just feel like there hasn't been a lot of response. So I would like to see, you know, a little bit of a change in the process as we're doing this instead of just rushing everything through.
Right, thank you. The time frame and the progress hopes are based on working backwards from the date that ballots need to go to printers. And we worked back, Laura and I worked together looking at the schedule, worked back from that saying, all right, when do we have to have all of the election handbook in place? And when do we have to have the candidates handbook in place? And when do all the documents need to be in place? So number one, this has been carefully considered. Number two, Jessamine, I hope you were paying attention. Several instances to, excuse me.
It's Jessamine, by the way.
Thank you. Several times tonight,
What was your name again?
Jessamine.
That's a weird one.
So I referenced several times tonight specific comments that residents made and how I tailored my recommendations or my motions to that. So Jessamine, I just can't let your comment that residents aren't heard. I've read and taken into account every written comment, every verbal comment. I've adjusted and drafted based on that. So that may be your perception, but I think other people who have heard tonight when I said, and I heard a resident say this, and so this, and another resident said that. So I move, have we done this, Laura? That we have the meeting on the 7th, that it start at 7, that we address all of the remaining issues and the documents. And if we expand allowing residents to speak from 1 minute to 2 minutes during the board meeting, that means residents will have 6 minutes to verbally give us their comments and unlimited time before whatever date you select, February 4th, to give us their verbal comments. I mean, their written comments. So they'll have 3 minutes at the beginning. They can pick any of the topics that you want to talk about for 3 minutes at the beginning. We're going to put the same election policies, procedures, and forms proposed by special committee as one agenda item. And I'll move that we allow people to speak for 2 minutes. And then they get to speak again for 1 minute at the end. That is 6 minutes during our board meeting where we really welcome the comments, but they also have the opportunity to write them.
Lisa, could you put that motion in writing, please?
No, I'm sorry. I don't have a way to write it. This is for every resident's good. And the motion is that we meet. Have we already approved the?
And a motion should not cover so many points.
Thank you. That's why I'm trying to circle back with.
Sky had made a motion a while ago that each issue be its own agenda item, and Jess seconded it. That's the last motion I have. Other than
did we not vote on that and it failed?
I think that failed.
Did it fail? Did I miss it?
We voted on that.
I think so.
See, I'm yeah, okay.
Okay, so
Deb, I thought we were at board comments, and I think, you know, Sky's comments led into this conversation because she was expressing that, you know, she wanted people to be able to speak more than once.
People get to speak 3 times for a total of 6 minutes.
So Lisa, more than one recommendation.
Yeah, your solution doesn't solve the problem. It's nice that you're doing that, but I don't think that's really the issue.
How does
I don't think people need more time. I think they want to speak more than once.
How does your CA board work? What do they allow residents to do?
3 minutes at the beginning of the meeting.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Lisa, you're offering 6 minutes?
So what
They also have a work session followed by the next regularly scheduled meeting is when they take a vote. So things are not rushed at CA meetings the way they are at our board meetings.
Thank you, Sky. Thank you, Sky. So
so what I have right now is that we are going to have one agenda item. Residents are allowed to speak for 2 minutes on that agenda item. And we have our usual, you know, resident village voices at the beginning of 3 minutes and resident feedback at the end of 1 minute. That's what I have.
And residents can speak on any topic they want on the agenda or off during village voices and at feedback. That's 6 minutes during our board meeting. Deb.
Brave in her hand.
Thank you.
That's
So,
every
sorry.
resident. Imagine if all 30 people who were on tonight spoke for 6 minutes. Deb.
Christine was saying something about most other boards have a tighter rule about people speaking into our board meetings as we go. Can you speak to that? I guess I'm unfamiliar with, I thought we were actually pretty tight, but you're saying that other places are tighter and we're a little looser with our regulations?
I mean, I don't have a huge amount of experience with boards, but the experience I do have is with this board in the past. And I know that they did not have as long of periods for residents to speak, and the opportunities were much more constrained. And there were issues in the past that I spoke to and that others that I know spoke to, and we had very strong opinions on those topics, right? And you know, we were able to have our time, but that was, that was it, right? Like, you have your strong feelings, you express your opinion, and the board has to make their decision, and they have their own opinions, and they make their decisions based.
So Sky, is that right then? Because you've been on for a while. Are you saying that there was less
This is my 4th term on the board. We instituted the 3-minute time limit when we were talking about the community response statement, because we had the banquet room full of people. On the other hand, we had several meetings, if not most of them, with very few residents, at least one with 0 residents. There just wasn't the need, with the exception of the community response statement meetings, which actually went on for months, and so did the addendum meeting. So again, that's one of my frustrations with this, in that these are very serious issues. And why do we have to decide upon them tonight? We should be discussing them, if not in a work session and then voting at the next meeting. If not that, we should be discussing them off and on for several months, because they are very serious and they are major issues. And I think the frustration that the residents have is they can only speak on one of the recommendations during the special meeting. And another is, why have a special meeting? What is the rush? Why not just do this at the next regularly scheduled meeting? And I know, Lisa, you have explained the backwards buildup, because everything needs to be done by a certain date. And again, people are asking me, why does it need to be done by a certain date? Everything in government works slowly so that it is done well. And I'm afraid that by rushing in to some decisions, that we aren't hearing all sides of any issue. And I agree with Jess. It's not the fact that people want to speak for 2 minutes rather than 1 minute. They want to speak on more than one of the recommendations. So that's it.
What's different between a work session? Please enlighten me. A work session and an actual board meeting. I know what a board meeting is. Been there many years in many places, but a work session, I'm not familiar.
Deb, I'm going to answer that. We don't typically have that practice here with our board. The CA board does, where again, they only allow residents to speak for 3 minutes. So
Jess can answer what is a work session meeting, I think, pretty well.
It's a meeting where you discuss a topic, but you don't vote. You discuss it, you sort of hash it out, you ask questions, and then at the next meeting, so we have some items that go on a consent agenda, which are like the easy ones that you can just sort of say, yeah, we all agreed to that. And then the more complicated ones, we have a second discussion, that second discussion is a little more time limited. Like, we might devote 90 minutes or 60 minutes to a topic at a work session and 20 minutes at the actual voting meeting.
Okay.
Because the idea is you've had those questions answered and cleared up.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate it. But getting back to what you're saying, Sky, is that every meeting should be an hour and a half, and maybe that's when nobody showed up, and maybe that's when 2 or 3 people showed up.
No, I didn't say that. I said that.
Who said that?
On a board training session that we all attended, it was stated that no board meeting should be over an hour and a half, and that's okay. So what else were you saying in previous boards?
Oh, me?
Yeah, I've been on many boards throughout my life, but the previous board here at the Village Center.
No, I didn't say anything about that.
Oh, okay, sorry.
All
That's
right,
okay.
I'd like to make a motion.
I
It would
think, I mean, I
last
think,
an hour and
I
a
think,
half, maybe 2 hours.
I think based on your comments, Guy, it sounds like when there was a contentious issue with many people who had strong opinions on it, that was a point where your board moved to limit resident feedback so that you could get stuff done.
Right, and those were only 2 issues. They were discussed over several months, each of them. What we have currently is we have 19 issues that people want to discuss. So, you know, and as I think I mentioned, River Hill started their online voting special committee before we started our committee. And so they're way ahead of us, and they have decided they cannot make a determination during this board term. And yet, you know, we're kind of rushing through on that. I think that some of these 19 issues really need to be spread over several months.
I mean, I see what you're saying, but at the same time, like we have had months of discussion in the special committee and resident feedback. Like there have been,
It started,
you know,
2 months ago. Started
right,
in
right.
November.
So we've had a lot of time, and you know, I would argue that a lot, you know, there's 19 points because we were very organized. Lisa was very organized when she, you know, wrote this all out and charged the special committee with this topic. I would say, in my opinion, this topic is comparable to, you know, the topic that you're discussing in terms of scope and importance to the village. You know, I mean, I don't think we're doing anything that is so different.
Thank you, Christine. I am now going to, in the interest of brevity, it's 11:24. Laura, have we made a motion and adopted it for the February 7th special meeting? Is that done? You're on mute. Laura, you're on mute.
She's pulling it, Deb.
So,
We haven't, I didn't get a motion, but you had said that there should be one agenda item for the meeting, that residents will speak for 2 minutes or allowed to speak for 2 minutes on that agenda item in the meeting, and they'll have their usual village voices and usual resident feedback at the end.
and that they may speak once for a period of 2 minutes.
2
We're gonna
minutes.
have a lot of interruptions. So
Right.
residents can speak for 3 minutes at the beginning during Village Voices. They can speak, we will have the election policies and procedures, continuing it as the new business item under one item as it is. Residents can speak for 2 minutes, but one time, and then they can have the opportunity to speak again for 1 minute at feedback.
Correct.
That is my motion. Can I get a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
All right, we've discussed it a lot. So all in favor of this motion, please raise your hand. Opposed to this motion, please raise your hand. Abstain.
On the grounds that it does not give the residents enough time to speak on more than one issue. And some people write, some people speak. I think we have to give them ample time to speak.
Duly noted, and I will respond again. Residents have 3 opportunities.
You will. Yes, we've heard that. That's quite all right, Lisa. We understand.
And we understand also. So residents can speak for 3 minutes.
Understand, Lisa, you don't have to reiterate. 3
Residents
minutes,
can
2
speak
minutes,
for
and 1
3
minute.
minutes at the beginning.
Hey, Sky, if you could just let her talk, I'd like to hear what she has to say, please.
Of the 19 questions, they can speak for 2 minutes, one time during the agenda items on any of the questions, and they may speak again for one item. That agenda item has now passed.
Okay.
And then Laura, can we talk about the timing of when you will accept written comments on what's the latest date written comments can be submitted, so you can turn around and get them out to the board for consideration for the February 7th meeting?
I think the February 4th suggestion is reasonable.
February 4th. And then I know you will work as expeditiously as possible to distribute a statement of where we are on all of the questions and distribute documents that we can make progress on after decisions tonight. Thank you very much.
So we were on board comments and Sky commented, but now does anybody have any other comments, I think?
Yeah, I would like to make a comment. I'm just, again, continually disappointed by the process that is being used by this board. And I really encourage everyone to think about, what issues in these 19 questions can be done easily now and which ones we should spend more time on, because I do think that there is absolutely no need to have everything decided before this year's election if we want to do it right. So that is my comment.
Thank you. Any other board comments?
Yeah, we have a hand up. Oh, board? No.
Just a board comment.
Nope.
Okay, now we're gonna move on to feedback sessions. Each resident has one opportunity to speak for 1 minute. And Laura, due to the late hour, I'm gonna ask that you time it for 60 seconds and at 60 seconds say, thank you, I need to turn you off now.
And you're muted. There you go.
Am I on?
Yeah.
You're on, Greg.
Hi, thank you very much. I'll try and be brief. Sky, I think you were incorrect on a couple of things this evening, and I'd like to clarify them. First of all, with respect to the Special Election Committee, we did debate and vote on every one of the 19 things that came to you as a board for your consideration. So to represent that we did not is incorrect. Also, I think you're incorrect with respect to the listening of former boards of which you were a part versus how this board has been conducting itself. My own personal experience through the last 7 years was there were times when we were lied to by the board. There were times when members of the board or the CA rep told us that we were old and our opinions didn't matter. And there were also times when we were verbally abused and harassed by members of the board.
That's a minute.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thank you for sharing.
A minute if you'd like to speak now. Samantha, you're muted, Samantha, just in case.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I didn't hear you call my name. I thought it was somebody else. I just wanted to say that I'm just severely disappointed in the process of how this board meeting went about. I feel that the process, it's more about the process of seeing board members and debate being shut down on certain issues. And I feel that we should have given more talk and more debate before decisions were made. And that is why it's not even about having a voice during the meetings as just a community member. It's more about seeing board members that you duly elected being shut down and their opinions being shut down. So I just wanted to express that disappointment and hope for better. Thank you.
I don't see any other hands up.
All right, great. Action items, Laura? So sorry.
I'm going to ask Deb Wesner about how those the watershed projects are proceeding in our village for the money that we gave back to CA. I'm going to get in touch with the representative from the Wild Lake High School PTSA and make sure she knows what she needs to get to us. And then get the documents together about the questions that haven't been answered this evening and what decisions were on the questions this evening, and then also distribute the abbreviated, simplified proposed documents for public comment.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay. Is Samantha, are you good or do you have your hand up?
I think
I'm sorry. I have to always lower my hand. I apologize.
That's okay. I didn't want to.
I apologize, girl.
We don't want to ignore you. It's okay.
No, I appreciate you.
Of course, of course.
All right. At the early hour of 11:32, I move that we adjourn this meeting. May I have a second?
Thanks, everybody. Even though we differ, I appreciate everyone's involvement. I really
Thank you for that comment. All in favor of adjourning the meeting, please raise your hand. All opposed? All abstaining? I can't see, Laura.
You're all good. It's all good. No one wants to continue. You're fine.
Good night, everyone. Be well.
Good night, everybody.
See
Thank
y'all
you.
later. Bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.